Chapter 1, When the Sky Forgets Itself. The morning Simon Crane sold the Deschamps study, the one with the impossible flowers suspended in a geometry that made your inner ear achy. Dallas woke up ordinary. Traffic hummed its usual hymn along Central Expressway. The Bishop Arts District smelled like calashes and disappointment. Everything was exactly as it should be until the sky cleared its throat at 9:47 a.m. and began dropping flowers, not petals, whole blossoms, heavy as fists, wet as newborns. They fell with purpose, with weight, with the kind of deliberate physics that made you question whether you'd taken your medications or forgotten to take them. A peony struck a Honda Civic on Northwest Highway and left a dent shaped like God's thumbprint. Tulips cratered windshields along Commerce Street. Near Dealey Plaza, where history already had too many questions, a middle-aged insurance adjuster took a full gladiolus to the temple and dropped like someone had unplugged him. Blood mixing with pollen, his cell phone skittering across the sidewalk, battery at 3%, the screen cracked into a spider's web of parallel universes where this maybe wasn't happening. People laughed at first. They always do. Laughter is what happens when the brain can't locate the right file folder for the moment it's experiencing. A construction worker on Lower Greenville caught a rose and held it up like he'd just won something. A jogger on the Katy Trail tried to dodge a cascade of daisies and ended up flat on her ass, her rollerblades spinning uselessly in the air while 90s music leaked from her headphones. Something by Garbage or Hole. Angry women with the kind of voices that sounded like they'd bitten through something metal to get free. Simon stood outside his gallery, crane and amp. Peculiar, a narrow shotgun space wedged between a Pasiugo and a printing shop run by Sister Catherine. A former Dominican with tattoos of saints up and down her forearms who now made wedding, invitations and funeral programs with equal detachment and watched the sky unmake itself. His phone vibrated. Meredith, his girlfriend, the woman who wore gray scarves like armor and kept a Doberman named Otis who had anxiety issues and needed Prozac ground into wet food twice daily. Where are you? Are you seeing this, Simon? Are you fucking seeing this? He was seeing it. The flowers fell in sheets now. A curtain of blooms that made the air thick and sweet and wrong. And here's the thing that made Simon's stomach fold into origami. He recognized them. Every variety, every species, every impossible hybrid. They were from the painting, the Deschamps study, the one he'd sold yesterday to the couple from Irving, both of them wearing red cowboy boots, snakeskin with little silver toe caps, the kind of boots that made you think of conspiracy theories and cults and suburban homes with rooms you weren't supposed to enter. The woman had copper-colored hair that caught the gallery lighting like it was on fire. The man had hands that looked like they'd hidden a body in concrete. Though Simon tried not to think about that too hard because money was money and rent on the gallery was obscene and his 67 Stingray needed new headers. His best friend Tommy would say he was being paranoid. Tommy, who played guitar in a band called The Astonishing News and drove a 1957 Ford Fairlane the color of a bright day, mint green with chrome that could blind you. Tommy, who lived in a converted textile loft in Deep Ellum with condos sprouting up around him like capitalist mushrooms. Tommy, who collected conspiracy theories the way other people collected vinyl. Tommy, who once spent 45 minutes explaining the Red Boots Club while they sat in traffic on 75. The Dallas skyline doing its broken tooth impression against a sky that had been until today reliably boring. Simon's phone. Simon, answer me. The flowers kept falling. A woman across the street tried to catch them, spinning with her arms out like she was in a ballet, the kind they did at the Windspear. All controlled violence and repressed screaming. A cat materialized on a nearby fire escape, watched the chaos with the supreme indifference of its species, then retreated into an open window where Simon could just glimpse zebra print upholstery and what might have been a homemade lamp constructed from deer antlers and rosary beads. He called Meredith. Where are you? Her voice had that particular frequency that meant she was either terrified or about to become terrifying. Outside the gallery. You? The museum. We evacuated. There's a fucking orchid embedded in the skylight. She worked at the Dallas Museum of Art, assistant curator. Spent her days around beauty that was supposed to stay in its frame and behave. Simon, I saw your Instagram yesterday. That painting you sold. I know. The flowers are identical. I know. A pause. The sound of sirens starting up, that rising wail that means the city is trying to organize chaos into categories. Emergency, disaster, terrorism, act of God, something for the insurance adjusters who weren't currently concussed by tulips. "Come to my place," Meredith said. "Bring Tommy if you can find him. Don't drive the Stingray visibility shit, take the El Camino. The El Camino's in the shop, transmission. Then walk. Jesus Christ, Simon, just get here." She lived in Oak Lawn, one of those studio condos with exposed brick and industrial chic that meant you could hear your neighbors' entire lives through the walls, their arguments, their lovemaking, their midnight snacks, the soft percussion of existence bleeding through plaster and good intentions. Simon started walking. The flowers crunched underfoot now, a carpet of blooms turning to mulch, to memory, to evidence of something no one would believe even though everyone was seeing it. He passed the alleyway behind the gallery where he sometimes saw Sister Catherine smoking misty menthols, her habit exchanged for jeans and a Talking Heads t-shirt. He passed a man trying to sweep flowers off the sidewalk with increasing fury, like he could restore order through aggression. He passed Dealey Plaza where tourists were filming everything, their phones held up like offerings, like maybe if they documented it properly reality would coalesce back into something manageable. His phone again. "Tommy this time. Dude, you need to come to the loft right now. I found something. It's about the painting and those people, the boot people." Simon stopped, turned around. Deep Ellum was closer than Oak Lawn anyway. The sky had stopped dropping flowers, but the aftermath looked like a wedding and crime scene had a baby white petals mixing with blood from various concussion victims. Emergency crews trying to establish perimeters, someone's abandoned rollerblades lying in a puddle that reflected clouds moving too fast, like they were evacuating. The loft was on Commerce, above what used to be a jazz club and was now a startup something or other, where young men in expensive sneakers talked about disruption while eating poke bowls. Tommy buzzed him up without asking who it was, which meant he was either expecting Simon or had abandoned all pretense of urban safety protocols. The elevator was vintage, the kind with an accordion gate that required you to manually close it or you'd plummet to your death, which seemed very on brand for today. Simon rode it up, watched the floors tick by through the grating, thought about Marcel Duchamp and how he'd spent his life insisting that art was whatever you decided to look at, that the frame made the thing, that reality was negotiable if you had enough audacity. Tommy's door was already open. The loft looked like a conspiracy theorist had fucked a record store. Posters covered every surface bands from the 90s, obscure Italian films, that famous photograph of Simone Signoret looking like she knew every secret you'd ever kept. In the corner, Tommy's guitars stood at attention, 7 of them, including the Fender Jazzmaster he'd named Leonardo because it required Renaissance-level problem-solving to keep in tune. Tommy himself stood in the center of the space, surrounded by printouts, his laptop glowing like a cyberpunk campfire. He looked up when Simon entered, and his expression was somewhere between vindicated and absolutely fucking terrified. "The couple who bought your painting," Tommy said without preamble. "Red Boots, Irving, I found their address. You left the invoice on your desk. I may have photographed it last week when I was waiting for you. Don't look at me like the toe, no, I have boundary issues." He gestured at his laptop. "Guess what else I found?" Simon moved closer. The screen showed a real estate listing, a house in Euless, just west of Irving. One of those suburban nightmares with too many gables and a lawn maintained with the kind of obsessive precision that suggested either German heritage or sociopathy. The listing was 3 years old, sold to cash buyers, no names listed. "Okay," Simon said slowly. "So they bought a house. People do that. Look at the interior photos. 4th one." Simon clicked. The image loaded. A room. Red pleated carpet covering every surface floor. Walls sealing like Elvis's jungle room had a nervous breakdown and metastasized. In the center, a velvet rope cordoning off something. The photo quality degraded there, got pixelated, like the camera couldn't quite process what it was seeing. "What the fuck is that?" "I don't know. But look at the color of the room. Now look at this." Tommy pulled up Simon's Instagram, the photo he'd posted yesterday of the Duchamp study before it sold. In the painting's background, barely visible, easy to miss unless you were looking, was a small rectangle. A room. Red walls. The same red. Simon's mouth had gone dry. That could be coincidence. Could be, except... Tommy pulled up another window. News article. Local interest piece from 2 years ago. Euless couple hosts alternative art salon. The photo showed the red boot couple, smiling that particular smile people wear when they're hiding their real faces underneath. Behind them, partially visible, the red room. What kind of salon? The article doesn't say, but look who wrote it. Tommy pointed at the byline. Catherine Morales? Our sister Catherine, the nun with the printing shop? Former nun, and yeah, I already called her, she's not answering. Tommy lit a cigarette even though smoking wasn't technically allowed in the loft, but today seemed like the kind of day where rules had taken a coffee break and might not come back. Simon, those flowers fell because of that painting, we both know it. And those people. A sound. Both of them froze. It came from above, from the roof access. A metallic scraping like someone was trying to open the hatch that Tommy had welded shut after a break-in last year. You expecting anyone? Simon whispered. Do I look like I'm expecting anyone? The scraping stopped. Then footsteps. Moving across the roof. Slow. Deliberate. The kind of footsteps that suggested the walker had all the time in the world and knew exactly where you were. Tommy stubbed out his cigarette. Tell me you have Meredith on speed dial. Why? Because I think we're going to need that Doberman. The footsteps stopped, directly above them. Simon could feel his heartbeat in his teeth, in his fingertips, in that space behind his eyes where hangovers lived. He thought about the painting, about impossible flowers, about the way the couple had looked at him when they'd loaded it into their Escalade like he'd just sold them something he didn't understand. Something that mattered in ways his reality wasn't calibrated to measure. His phone. Simon. Where are you? The news is saying the flowers are spreading, they're falling in Irving now, and you as Simon, please answer. He looked at Tommy. Tommy looked at the ceiling. The ceiling looked back with supreme indifference. And then, very quietly, almost politely, someone knocked on the roof hatch. 3 times. Patient. Like they could wait forever. Like they already had. Chapter 2. The geometry of deteriorating certainties. The knocking continued. 3 beats, then silence. 3 beats, then silence. The rhythm had the patience of geological time, of continental drift, of someone who understood that all doors eventually open if you're willing to wait through enough lifetimes. Tommy's cigarette had burned down to the filter in his motionless hand, a small tower of ash threatening to cascade onto the hardwood. Simon watched it the way you watch a timer on a bomb in movies, with the irrational certainty that if it fell, something worse would happen. Some dominoes would tip that couldn't be untipped. We're not answering that, Tommy said, his voice barely above a whisper. The kind of volume you use in public restrooms when you're hoping the person in the next stall doesn't realize you exist. Agreed. We're going to back away slowly. Also agreed. Neither of them moved. The knocking stopped. For exactly 17 seconds Simon counted them, his internal metronome suddenly calibrated to terror. There was nothing. Then came a different sound. Scraping? Metal on metal. Someone was doing something to the hatch lock. Though Tommy had welded it shut after 2 different break-ins and one incident involving a peacock that had somehow gotten onto the roof and spent 3 days screaming like a woman being murdered in a Victorian novel. That's welded, Tommy said, still not moving. That's fucking welded. The scraping intensified. Then a smell, hot metal, burning, the particular scent of something being cut through with tools that shouldn't exist or shouldn't be used for this purpose. Simon's phone kept buzzing against his thigh like a trapped insect. Meredith. Probably escalating from concerned to furious, that particular trajectory she traveled when he failed to respond within her acceptable time frame. Stairs, Simon said. They moved. Not running would acknowledge the situation, give it power, but walking with aggressive purposefulness toward the stairwell. Tommy grabbed his laptop, shoved printouts into a messenger bag that had band patches from shows he'd played in the 90s when he still believed music could save you from anything. Simon grabbed nothing because his hands had forgotten how to work. The stairwell was concrete and echo, 7 flights down to street level, their footsteps multiplying into a chorus of retreat. Behind them, above them, the sound of metal finally giving way. A metallic shriek like a mechanical birth, and then footsteps. Following, not rushing, still patient, still inevitable. Jesus fuck, Tommy gasped as they hit the 4th floor landing. Jesus fucking Christ on A, save it for when we're not dying. They burst through the ground floor exit into an alley that smelled like failure and fermented dreams, the particular perfume of Deep Ellum's underbelly, where the city's digestive system processed ambition into something more manageable. The flowers had stopped falling, but their corpses covered everything, a botanical massacre that made walking feel like fleeing a wedding where someone had been murdered at the altar. Tommy's Fairlane was parked half a block down, that mint green promise of escape, but between them and it stood a figure. Not the roof person, someone else. Sister Catherine? Former Sister Catherine. She stood in a shaft of weird afternoon light that made her look like she was posing for a painting about religious doubt, still wearing her Talking Heads t-shirt. Stop making sense, which felt cosmically ironic, and holding a cigarette that had burned down to nothing while she'd apparently been waiting. You can't go to your car, she said without preamble, her voice carrying that particular authority that comes from having once been married to God and then filing for divorce. Catherine, Simon started. They're watching it. 2 of them. Red boots both. I don't know how many are in the city now. More than yesterday. She took a drag of her exhausted cigarette, seemed to realize it was dead, dropped it. The house in Euless. I should never have written that article. What's in that house? Tommy demanded, still breathing hard, glancing back at the stairwell door like it might birth something terrible. A room, a womb room, they called it. That's the phrase they used, where things gestate. Catherine's eyes had the flat quality of someone who'd seen something they couldn't unsee and had made peace with permanent discomfort. The painting your friend sold it wasn't art. It was a document, a prophecy, a set of instructions the universe can read. Simon's phone, 15 missed calls from Meredith, 3 from a number he didn't recognize, 1 voicemail that was probably just breathing. The sky had taken on a strange quality, like someone had adjusted the saturation too high, made everything hyperreal and vaguely nauseous. We need to go to the police, Simon said, hearing how stupid it sounded even as the words left his mouth. And tell them what? Catherine lit another misty menthol, this one successfully. That a painting made flowers fall? That there's a couple in red boots who can apparently walk through welded hatches? I called the police after I wrote that article. Told them what I'd seen in that house. They checked my eyes for dilation, asked about my medications, suggested I might be experiencing a late-onset psychotic break. She smiled without any joy in it. The world prefers its mysteries unsolved, Simon. Solutions are uncomfortable. A sound from above. They all looked up. On the roof of Tommy's building, silhouetted against that too bright sky, stood a figure. Too far to make out details, but the posture radiated purpose. It raised one arm, pointed directly at them. My car, Catherine said. Now. Her car turned out to be a 1986 Chevy Cavalier, the color of primer and regret, parked behind her printing shop with bumper stickers that suggested she'd gone through a significant political evolution since leaving the church. They crammed into it, Tommy in back with his laptop and existential dread, Simon in front experiencing the particular claustrophobia of being hunted by unclear forces. Catherine drove like she was being chased even before they were being chased, which was prescient because 3 blocks down Commerce a red pickup truck pulled out of nowhere and fell in behind them. Not aggressively, just there. Following with the confidence of someone who had GPS psychic certainty, or both. They can track the painting, Catherine said, taking a corner fast enough to make the Cavalier's suspension scream. Or track you. Or both. I don't know the mechanics. The couple, the Rourkes, that's their name. I looked them up after they talked about harmonic resonance. The painting resonates with you now. You sold it, you touched it, you posted it online. You're linked. That's insane, Simon said. Yes. But insanity and impossibility are different categories. One's a judgment, the other's a fact. Today we got a bunch of new facts. They were on 75 now, heading north, the skyline receding behind them like a memory trying to erase itself. The red truck followed 3 car lengths back, matching their speed exactly. Tommy had his laptop open, typing frantically. What are you doing? Simon asked. That Duchamp study, it's not listed in any catalog. I'm checking every database, every collection, every auction house. It doesn't exist. Officially, that painting was never painted. I sold it. It existed. Did it? Or did it come into existence when you looked at it? Quantum art? Schrodinger's fucking masterpiece. Tommy's laugh had a hysterical edge. There's a whole conspiracy theory about this. The Red Boots Club, they collect paintings that don't exist yet, art that's waiting to happen, images that can reprogram reality if you know how to look at them. Picasso supposedly understood this. Why do you think his work fragments perception? He wasn't representing cubism, he was installing it, making the eye accept multiple perspectives simultaneously, training consciousness to hold contradictions. Catherine took the exit for Euless doing 70, the Cavalier shuddering like it was having religious doubts of its own. Picasso understood something else too, she said. That art is dangerous. That images have power. He painted Guernica after the bombing, but some scholars think he painted it before. That the painting caused the bombing, or called it, or documented it from a future that hadn't happened yet. Time isn't linear for real art. It's a Möbius strip. The red truck followed them onto the service road. Still not aggressive, just inexorable. Where are we going? Simon demanded. The house. You want answers, that's where they keep them. Catherine lit another cigarette off the last one, a chain of anxiety and nicotine. But we're not going through the front door. Euless emerged around them like a suburban tumor, all manicured lawns and HOA compliance, the kind of neighborhood where everyone had secrets but kept them in matching storage containers from the container store. The sky was darker here, or seemed darker, like the light had better things to do than illuminate this particular geography. They passed a church with a steeple that looked like it was trying to puncture heaven, a county town festival setting up in a park, little yellow flags and craft booths, and that particular species of enforced cheerfulness that small town events radiate like fallout. A woman was unloading peacocks from a travel trailer, the birds screaming their prehistoric rage at existence. A man was setting up a booth that appeared to sell only items shaped like Texas, which was either entrepreneurship or mental illness with good branding. There, Catherine said, pointing. The Rourke house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac like a final boss in a video game about architectural anxiety. 3 stories? Too many windows. Solar panels that probably didn't connect to anything. The lawn was perfect except for one corner where newly paved concrete formed a rectangle like they'd buried something recently and wanted it to stay buried. The red truck pulled past them, turned into the Rourke driveway, parked. Shit, Tommy breathed. Wait, Catherine said. The truck sat there, idling. Nobody got out. The windows were tinted the kind of black that made you think of government operations and mobster funerals. After 2 minutes it backed out, drove away, disappeared around a corner with the finality of something that had made its point. They wanted us to know they know where we are, Simon said. Yes. So why did they leave? Because, Catherine said, her voice going quiet in a way that made Simon's spine feel like it was full of cold water, they want us to go inside. We're being invited. They sat in the Cavalier's rapidly cooling interior watching the house watch them back. The sky continued its bizarre color saturation, clouds moving in formations that looked almost deliberate, almost alphabetic, like the atmosphere was trying to spell something if only they knew what language to read it in. Tommy's phone buzzed. Then Simon's. Then Catherine's, all at once. The exact same text from 3 different numbers. The womb room is waiting, 2nd floor, red door, come alone or come together, either way you come. Well, Tommy said after a long moment of processing dread, that's not ominous at all. Simon called Meredith. It rang twice before she picked up, and the relief in her voice was palpable and painful. Where the fuck have you been? Long story. Listen, I need you to do something. Are you okay? The news is saying Meredith, listen, write this down. He gave her the address, the situation, the rough outline of impossibilities. If you don't hear from me in 2 hours, call everyone, police, FBI, newspapers, conspiracy theory podcasts, everyone. Tell them about the painting, the flowers, the red boots, all of it. Make noise. Make it impossible to ignore. A pause. Simon, don't go in that house. I have to. Why? Good question. Why? Because the painting had sold and the sky had broken, and now he was implicated in something that violated the basic contract between reality and observation. Because running felt like it would make him keep running forever? Because somewhere in his stupid artist's brain he needed to know, needed to see, needed to understand what was behind the red door, even if understanding destroyed him. Because, he said, I looked at that painting, really looked at it. And I think it looked back. He hung up before she could argue. Catherine was already getting out of the car, moving with the resigned purposefulness of someone walking toward their own execution after accepting the verdict. Tommy followed, clutching his messenger bag like it contained holy relics. Simon stood on the perfect suburban sidewalk and looked up at the house. From somewhere nearby came the sound of a leaf blower, that particular suburban hymn of enforced order. A Corvette drove past, then a fucking Lamborghini, which seemed cosmically absurd. Who drove a Lamborghini in Euless? But today had abandoned absurdity as a meaningful category. The front door was unlocked. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from the exterior, tasteful, boring, the kind of aggressive normalcy that felt like camouflage. Beige walls, hardwood floors, a bowl of decorative balls that served no purpose. Family photos that looked stock too perfect, too demographically diverse, like they'd come with the frames. And a smell. Underneath the Glade plugins and forced domesticity, something else. Organic. Sweet. Wrong. The stairs were carpeted in a pattern that looked like it was moving if you watched it too long. Catherine led the way, her footsteps silent, her posture suggesting she'd done this before or was imagining she had. Second floor landing. 3 doors. 2 white, 1 red. The red door had a brass handle shaped like an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. Infinity as appetite. Last chance to run, Catherine said without looking at them. Nobody ran. She opened the door. The room beyond was exactly as photographed. Red pleated carpet on every surface, ceiling to floor, a padded cell designed by someone with a fetish for Vegas and claustrophobia. In the center, cordoned off by velvet rope, sat a structure that hurt to look at directly. Not because it was grotesque though, it was but because it seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process. It was approximately spherical. It pulsed. It was made of something that looked like flesh but moved like liquid but reflected light like metal. Inside it, dimly visible through translucent membranes, shapes moved, gestated, became. On the wall, written in what looked like Sharpie on a dry erase board someone had forgotten to erase, Protocol for installation. 1. Acquire source image, pre-existent or commissioned. 2. Introduce to womb room. 3. Allow 72 hours for resonance establishment. 4. Sell to marked individual, red thread identifies them. 5. Manifestation occurs within 24 hours of sale. 6. Collect residue for next installation below this, in different handwriting, messier. Spontaneous human combustion was the first manifestation before we understood the process. People who looked at the right images at the right time, their bodies couldn't hold the information, they burned from inside out, their fat rendering down to ash and wonder, a pile of grease and mystery, always the extremities intact because the fire started in the center, in the soul. In the place where observation meets participation, Tommy was taking photos with his phone, his hands shaking so badly the images probably looked like abstract expressionism. Catherine approached the sphere. I've seen 5 of these now, different houses, different cities, always the same people or people wearing the same boots, which might be the same thing. They're building something, a network. Each manifestation strengthens the field, makes the next one easier. They're teaching reality to take dictation. From what? Simon asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. From images that exist outside time, paintings, the original pictures that all other pictures are copies of, Plato's cave shadow puppets, except we're the shadows and they're trying to make us real. She touched the sphere just a fingertip, a moment of contact hand jerked back. It's warm, and it's growing. A sound behind them. They spun. The Rourkes stood in the doorway. Both wearing red cowboy boots? Both smiling with mouths that had too many teeth or teeth that were too knowing, or something was wrong with their faces in a way Simon's brain couldn't quite categorize. The woman's copper hair moved independently of air current, each strand making decisions. You came, Mrs. Rourke said. Her voice sounded like 3 voices in harmony, slightly out of sync. We hoped you would. The marked ones usually do. What do you want? Simon managed. Want? Nothing. We're facilitators, midwives. The images want to be born. We just provide the womb. Mr. Rourke gestured at the sphere with something approaching paternal pride. Your painting was dormant for 80 years, hidden in a estate sale in Longview. Wrapped in newspaper from 1945, we woke it up, fed it attention, let it know it could exist, and you were perfect. Gallery owner, social media presence, the ideal vector. Vector for what? For the next phase. Mrs. Rourke stepped into the room. The door closed behind her, though no one touched it. The flowers were just a test, proof of concept. The next manifestation will be bigger, already gestating. She pointed at the sphere. Want to see? Simon did not want to see. Every cell in his body was voting for not seeing. But his eyes betrayed him, looked anyway, focused on the shapes moving inside the membrane. Buildings. He was seeing buildings. The Dallas skyline, but wrong, twisted, melted like Dali had redesigned urban planning during a fever dream. And moving through these impossible structures, figures, hundreds of them, thousands. People or things shaped like people, all wearing red boots, Tommy whispered. They're all wearing red boots. The boots are important, Mr. Rourke agreed. Symbolic anchors. The image needs a symbol to crystallize around. Boots are perfect, they're grounded. Literally, they touch the earth, they walk between worlds. His smile widened, became something that shouldn't be possible with human facial architecture. When this manifestation occurs 3 days from now, we estimate everyone in Dallas will put on red boots. They won't know why, they'll just feel compelled. And once they're wearing them, once they're participating in the symbol, the next phase begins. What's the next phase? Catherine demanded, her hand moving toward her pocket where Simon suspected she had a weapon, though what weapon worked against people who might not be people anymore. Collective observation collapses individual reality, Mrs. Rourke said, like she was explaining something simple to children. Everyone seeing the same thing, wearing the same symbol, participating in the same image, consciousness synchronizes. The hive mind isn't science fiction. It's just art criticism taken seriously. Duchamp knew, Picasso knew, all the real ones knew. Art doesn't reflect reality, it infects it. The sphere pulsed, brighter now. The shapes inside became clearer. The boo people standing in the melted Dallas, all facing the same direction, all looking at Simon squinted. In the center of the vision, rising from what used to be Dealey Plaza, a structure. Organic. Architectural. Impossible. Like the womb room's sphere but city-sized, a growth that had replaced the grassy knoll, pulsing with the same wet light. What is that? He asked, though he was starting to understand, the way you understand things in nightmares right before you wake up screaming. The mother womb, the Rourkes said in unison, their voices now perfectly synchronized. Where all images come from, where all observers go, the place where art and reality finally fuck and make offspring that's neither and both. Tommy bolted. Just turned and ran, shouldering past the Rourkes who made no move to stop him. His footsteps hammering down the stairs, the front door slamming, his Fairlane's engine roaring to life outside. The Rourkes watched him go with benign amusement. There's always a runner, Mrs. Rourke said. It's fine, he's Mark II. He touched the printouts, looked at the photos, he'll manifest symptoms within a day. Symptoms, Catherine repeated flatly. Minor reality slippage at first, déjà vu, synchronicities, seeing things that aren't there yet or were never there. By day 3 he'll be ready, he'll want to participate, the image will call him home. Mr. Rourke checked his watch, an actual watch analog, which seemed somehow more disturbing than anything else because it suggested they still tracked linear time even while destroying it. You two should go. The womb room needs to be alone with the new installation. It gets shy around observers who aren't ready. Simon looked at Catherine. Catherine looked at the sphere. Then, very calmly, she pulled out what was indeed a gun, small, practical, the kind of weapon you carry when you've made peace with violence as a necessary tool. She shot the sphere. The sound was enormous in the padded room, but the effect was worse. The bullet struck the membrane and disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed. Disappeared like it had passed into a different category of existence. The sphere pulsed once, twice. Then it opened. Not split, not tore. Opened, like a flower, like a wound, like a vagina, giving birth to something that had never been conceived. What emerged was light and sound and smell and wrongness, a multisensory scream that bypassed observation and went straight to the lizard brain, the part that still remembered when humans were prey. Simon ran. Catherine followed, her gun now useless, just dead weight, a failed proposition. Behind them the Rourke's laughter echoed, multiplying, becoming a choir. They hit the stairs doing what could charitably be called controlled falling. The front door, outside, the Cavalier, Catherine's hands shaking so badly she couldn't get the key in the ignition. The house behind them pulsing now, visibly, the windows lighting up in sequence like a heartbeat, like Morse code, like communication with something that didn't use language. The engine caught. They peeled out, tires screaming, leaving rubber on the perfect suburban asphalt. In the rearview mirror, the house receded but didn't diminish, somehow staying the same size no matter how far they drove, until Catherine took a corner and it was gone, blinked out of visual continuity. They drove in silence for 5 miles before either of them could speak. "That wasn't real," Simon finally said. "Define real." "Catherine, shut up, I'm thinking." She lit another cigarette with shaking hands. "They let us leave." "Why did they let us leave?" "Because we're marked. Like Tommy," they said. "I know what they said, but there's something else, something we're missing." She pulled into a gas station, parked under the fluorescent lights that hummed their Mercury hymn. Pulled out her phone, started scrolling. "The article I wrote, I researched their background, property records. The house in Uliset's one of 17 they own, all across Texas, all purchased in the last 5 years, all identical layouts. 17 womb rooms, 17 that I found. Could be more." She showed him her phone. A map with red pins. Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. All the major cities. Each one probably has a sphere. Each one gestating something. The flowers were just Dallas. What if each city gets its own manifestation? What if they're not building a network, they're building a body, piece by piece, organ by organ, and Texas is becoming something's anatomy? "Simon's phone, Meredith," he answered. "I'm okay," he said before she could ask. "Where are you?" "Gas station, Euless. Things are weird. Things are weird everywhere. The flowers started falling again, in Fort Worth this time. And Simon, they're different." "Different how?" "They're moving. After they land, they're crawling, growing legs, flower spiders, someone on Twitter called them. The video is." She made a sound, half laugh, half sob. "Jesus Christ, I'm watching flowers walk and I'm more disturbed by how much it makes sense. Like, of course flowers would walk. Why did we ever think they'd stay still?" Catherine was out of the car, pacing, smoking, talking to someone on her own phone. Through the gas station window, Simon could see the clerk watching a small TV, his face slack with the particular hypnosis of breaking news. On the screen, aerial footage of Fort Worth, flowers covering the streets, and yes, they were moving, coordinating, forming patterns that looked like letters. The flowers were arranging themselves into letters. Spelling something. Simon got out of the car, walked to the station window, pressed his face against the glass to read the TV caption. "Mysterious floral message appears in Fort Worth. Put them on his feet." He looked down at his feet. Normal shoes. Vans. Black and white? Not red. Not boots. But for just a momenta flicker, a quantum uncertainty, he saw them. Red boots. Snakeskin. Silver toe caps. On his feet but not on his feet, existing in superposition, waiting for his observation to collapse them into reality. He looked up. Catherine had stopped pacing. She was staring at her own feet with an expression of dawning horror. "You see them too," Simon said. Not a question. "I see them. Tommy was right, we're marked, the boots are coming. Then we take them off. I'm not wearing them yet." "Yes you are, you're just also not wearing them, Schrodinger's fucking footwear." She grabbed his shoulders, forced him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. The Rourkes, the womb rooms, the manifestations, it's all about observation, about looking. The painting taught you to see a certain way. Now you can't unsee it. The boots exist because we can imagine them, and once enough people can imagine them, they'll be real, for everyone." "Exactly. Consensus reality, democracy of perception, the majority vote makes it true." She let him go, looked up at the sky, which had achieved a shade of purple that wasn't in the normal spectrum. "We have maybe 3 days before critical mass, before enough people see the boots that they become more real than not boots, before Dallas turns into what we saw in that sphere." "So what do? We find the other installations, all 17, and we destroy them." "You shot the sphere, it didn't work." "I used the wrong weapon, bullets are too literal, these things exist in metaphor, in symbol, we need symbolic violence, artistic destruction." she smiled, and it was the most terrifying smile Simon had ever seen because it contained hope. We need to create a counter-image, something that undoes the boots. That teaches people to unsee them. How? I don't know yet, but I know someone who might. She pulled out her phone again, scrolled through contacts. There's an artist. Lives in a travel trailer out past Arlington? Used to be famous in the 90s until he had what everyone called a breakdown but what he called an awakening. Claimed he'd figured out how to paint images that unpaint other images. Deinstallation art, he called it. Everyone thought he was insane. Was he? Probably. But today, insanity and truth are starting to look pretty fucking similar. Simon got back in the Cavalier. Meredith was still on the phone, he realized, had heard everything. I'm coming with you. No, Simon. Shut up. I'm bringing Otis. You're going to need a Doberman before this is over. Why would we need a? But she'd already hung up. Catherine started the car. Your girlfriend's right, by the way. About the dog. How would you know? Because in the article I wrote, in the version I didn't publish, there was a detail I left out. She pulled back onto the road, heading west toward Arlington and the setting sun that looked like it was bleeding. The Rourkes had a Doberman. Named it Virgil. Said it could see between dimensions, could track things that hadn't happened yet. They gave it away right before the first manifestation. Said it had served its purpose. What was its purpose? To teach them how to look sideways. How to see the boots before the boots existed. Dogs don't have the same reality filters humans do. They see ghosts, sense earthquakes, know when you're coming home before you've even left work. The Rourkes trained with that dog like it was a meditation teacher. And then they didn't need it anymore because they'd learned to see like it saw. Simon thought about Otis, anxious, neurotic Otis, who needed Prozac to function, who barked at nothing, who sometimes stared at corners of rooms where nothing visible existed. What if Otis wasn't anxious? What if he was aware? What if his whole problem was that he could see too much, and the Prozac was the only thing keeping him from drowning in perceived realities? His phone buzzed. Text from Tommy. At my loft Thayer, everywhere the flowers came back Simon Thayer, in my apartment Thayer, spelling my name a photo. Tommy's loft, flowers covering the floor, arranged in letters 6 feet high. Thomas Andrew Kershaw, another text. How do they know my middle name? I never told anyone, Simon. How do they know? We need to get Tommy, Simon said. We can't save everyone. He's my best friend. And if we waste time, Catherine, please. She looked at him, something calculating happening behind her eyes, some moral arithmetic. Then she sighed. Deep Ellum. But 5 minutes. If he's not ready to go, we leave him. They merged onto 75, heading south now, back toward Dallas, toward the skyline that looked wrong. Like someone had adjusted its vertical hold. The radio was all emergency broadcasts and confusion, reports of flowers in 6 cities now. People claiming they could see boots they weren't wearing. A preacher on one station screaming about end times, a scientist on another explaining mass hallucination with the confidence of someone who hadn't checked his own feet recently. They passed the county town festival, which was somehow still setting up despite everything. The peacocks were loose, screaming across the parking lot. A booth had caught fire, black smoke rising. The little yellow flowers that had decorated everything were moving now, crawling toward the flames like they were cold and needed warmth. A travel trailer sat at the edge of the festival grounds, pine trees surrounding it, giving it shade and privacy. The door was open. Inside, darkness. And from that darkness, watching them pass, 2 points of red light, eyes or lights or something that wanted to be perceived as either. Catherine saw it too. The trailer artist. He's already here. They're all converging. The marked ones, the aware ones, the ones who can see the boots, were being collected. For what? For the birth. For when the mother womb manifests, we'll be the first citizens, the founding fathers of whatever Dallas becomes. Simon looked down at his feet again. The boots were more solid now. He could feel them. Weight, texture, the particular grip of snakeskin leather. When had they become so real? When had not wearing them become the hallucination? Deep Ellum emerged around them like a memory of itself. The flowers had completely covered Commerce Street now. A carpet 3 feet deep, moving in waves like the street was breathing. Tommy's building stood at the center of this botanical ocean, windows dark except for one. His loft, where light flickered. Catherine pulled up as close as she could. The flowers crunched under the tires with sounds like small bones breaking. 5 minutes. I'm timing it. Simon got out. The flowers reached his knees immediately, grasping with petal fingers that felt more real than they should. He waded toward the building entrance. Behind him, Catherine stood by the car, her gun out, scanning the street with the alertness of someone who'd accepted that anything might happen, and most of it would be bad. The elevator was full of flowers. They'd forced themselves through the gate, filled the car, blooming in the artificial light. Simon took the stairs, pushing through drifts of petals and stems, the stairwell smelling like a funeral home crossed with a crime scene. Tommy's door was open. Inside, flowers everywhere, covering every surface, growing from the floorboards, climbing the walls, hanging from the ceiling like stalactites made of organic matter and impossible biology. In the center of this garden, Tommy sat at his laptop, typing with mechanical precision, his face blank, his eyes reflecting nothing. "Tommy," Simon said. No response, just typing. Simon moved closer, looked at the screen. Tommy was writing. Not code, not emails, a document, pages and pages of text, scrolling endlessly. I put them on 10,000 repetitions. 20,000, still typing. His fingers bleeding now from the repetition but not stopping. Couldn't stop, the boots had him. The image had him. He was translating himself into symbol, and soon there'd be nothing left but red snakeskin and silver toe caps and the memory of a person who used to play guitar in bands that nobody remembered. "Tommy!" Simon tried again, grabbing his shoulder. Tommy's head turned. The movement was wrong, too smooth, ball-bearing precision. His mouth opened. What came out wasn't his voice. "The womb room is open. The mother calls her children home. Put them on. Put them on. Let the boots teach you to walk between what is and what could be. Put them." Simon slapped him, hard, the kind of cinematic slap that never works in real life but sometimes desperation manifests as cliché. Tommy blinked, focused. "Simon, we're leaving. Now." "I can't. They're in my head." "The boots." "They're in my head and they're showing me things. Beautiful things. Dallas rebuilt. Everyone connected. No more loneliness. No more." He looked down at his feet. Red boots, fully manifested, real. "I'm already wearing them. When did I put them on?" "You didn't. They put themselves on." "That's not how shoes work. Nothing works how it's supposed to anymore." Simon grabbed Tommy's arm, tried to pull him up. Tommy resisted with surprising strength, his body anchored to the chair like he'd grown roots. "I saw my mother," Tommy said quietly, "in the vision. The boots showed me. She was in the mother womb, waiting for me. She looked young, happy, like before the cancer. She said if I just accepted the boots, if I walked into the new Dallas, she'd be there. We could finish conversations we never got to finish. I could tell her things I never." His voice cracked. "What if it's real? What if the boots can do that? They can't bring back the dead, can't they? If reality's negotiable, if observation creates truth, why can't they? If enough people believe she's there, if enough people see her, doesn't she become there? Isn't that how everything works now?" Simon didn't have an answer for that. The philosophical implications were fracturing his brain. He looked around the loft, at the flowers that were now pulsing in rhythm with Tommy's heartbeat, synchronized, sympathetic. On the wall, Tommy's guitars hung like executed prisoners. The Fender Jazzmaster Leonardo had flowers growing through its strings, blooming from the pickups. "Catherine's downstairs. We're going to Arlington. There's an artist who might know how to stop this." "You can't stop it." Tommy gestured at his laptop. "I've been researching. While I was whatever I was doing. Typing. The boots were showing me things, teaching me. There are installations in 47 cities now. Not 17. 47. They've been building this for decades. Since the 70s at least, maybe longer. Every weird art movement, every reality-bending piece, every painting that made people feel strange, those were tests. Prototypes? Building toward this. 47 cities. And growing. Exponentially. By tomorrow it'll be hundreds. By next week the whole country. The boots are viral. Mimetic. They spread through observation. Everyone you've talked to today? They're marked now. Everyone they talk to? Also marked. It's a pyramid scheme except the product is participating in your own unreality." Simon's phone, Meredith. He didn't answer. Couldn't. His hands were shaking too badly. Because Tommy was right. He could feel it. The boots on his feet getting heavier, more insistent. And underneath the terror, something else, curiosity. The artist in him wanting to see where this went. What the mother womb would birth. What Dallas would become when consensus reality finally shattered and reformed into something stranger. "Come with me," Simon said. "Even if we can't stop it, come with me anyway." "Why?" "Because you're my best friend. Because I need you. Because if reality's ending, I don't want to watch it end alone." Tommy looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he saved his documental those repetitions of "I put them on," a mantra or a prayer or a warning, closed his laptop, and stood. The boots on his feet seemed to pulse with disappointment. "Okay," Tommy said. "But Simon, I don't think we're going to make it. I think the boots win. I think they've already won and we're just watching the replay, living in the last moments before the new world starts. But okay, we'll try." They made it to the stairs before Tommy collapsed. Just dropped, like someone had cut his strings. Simon caught him, barely, lowered him to the landing. Tommy's eyes were rolled back, showing white, his mouth moving without sound. "Tommy!" Catherine appeared below them, taking the stairs 3 at a time. "What happened?" "I don't know, the boots are doing something, installing, look." Tommy's feet were changing. Not the boots, though, stayed the same. But his actual feet underneath, the flesh and bone and architecture of him, they were simplifying, becoming more conceptual, less specific. Like a photograph losing resolution, detail draining away until he had feet that could be anyone's feet. Archetypal feet, the platonic ideal of feet. "They're making him generic," Catherine said, feeling his pulse. "Erasing specificity. You can't have individuals in a hive mind. Everyone needs to be compatible, interchangeable. Unique identity is a bug, not a feature." "How do we stop it?" "We don't. We get him to the trailer artist. Maybe there's something." She hoisted Tommy up, surprising strength for her frame. "Help me carry him." They hauled Tommy down the remaining flights, through the flower-choked lobby, out into the street where the flowers had grown another foot, reaching waist-high now. The Cavalier sat isolated in a circle of clear pavement. The flowers had avoided it, left it alone, like even botanical hive minds knew not to fuck with a 1986 Chevy Cavalier held together by spite and prayer. They shoved Tommy in the back seat. He was mumbling now, coherent words emerging from the verbal static. "Rourke's weren't the first. Found the instructions in Dealey Plaza. Buried under the grassy knoll. Someone left them there in 1963, or they were always there. Time loops, causality is a circle." "The assassination was an art installation, consciousness restructuring." "Kennedy's brain matter hit the concrete and reality cracked, and they've been widening the crack ever since." Catherine drove. Fast. Aggressive. The Cavalier's engine screaming like it understood the stakes. They passed a public restroom that had flowers growing from the toilets, blooming from the plumbing. A gay bathhouse with its windows blown out, flowers exploding from inside like something had achieved critical mass and detonated in botanical orgasm. An overpass where someone had spray-painted in letters 10 feet high, "The boots are the truth." "Did you know," Catherine said conversationally, like they were discussing the weather instead of fleeing apocalypse, "that spontaneous human combustion was first documented in 1663? A Danish anatomist found a woman burned to ash in her bed, everything else untouched. For centuries people tried to explain it. Alcohol-soaked tissues, methane buildup in the intestines, psychological stress causing bioelectrical discharge. But what if it wasn't combustion? What if it was manifestation? People looking at the wrong images that existed outside causality, and their bodies couldn't process the information. The contradiction burned them up from inside. Literal cognitive dissonance. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm next. I can feel it. The boots are coming for me too. My feet are starting to simplify. Soon I'll be generic, compatible, part of the system. But before that happens, I need you to understand something." She took a corner hard enough to make the tires scream. "The Rourkes, the installations. The Mother Womet's not evil. It's not good either. It's art, pure art. Art that stops apologizing for wanting to reshape reality. Art that stops being content to represent and starts demanding to manifest. And maybe that's what art was always supposed to do. Maybe we've just been doing it wrong for 10,000 years." Simon looked at his own hands. Were they simplifying too? Becoming less his hands and more just hands, the concept of hands, hands that anyone could wear like gloves. He couldn't tell. His perception was fracturing, multiplying, like Picasso had crept inside his optic nerve and started redecorating. Arlington appeared around them like a hallucination given municipal authority. Suburbs and strip malls and that particular species of American nowhere that made you question the point of consciousness. Catherine navigated by instinct or memory or something else, pulling off the main road onto a dirt path that wound through pine trees that looked wrong, too symmetrical, too deliberate, planted by something that understood sacred geometry but had never actually seen a forest. The travel trailer sat in a clearing. Silver? Vintage. Airstream maybe, or some knockoff. Christmas lights were strung around it green, which felt significant or random or both. The door was open. Smoke drifted out, but not fire smoke. Incense. Marijuana? Something else underneath that smelled like copper and regret. Catherine killed the engine. The sudden silence was oppressive. No birds, no insects. Just whined through the pines, making sounds like conversation in a language Simon almost recognized. "You're going in alone," Catherine said. "What?" "I can't. The boots have me too far. If I go in there, if I look at his counter-images, I might fracture completely, might become a paradox, both generic and specific, both here and there. The human mind can't sustain that. I'd combust. Literally. Spontaneous human combustion, modern edition, Catherine Morales edition, burning up because she tried to hold contradictions that evolution hasn't equipped us for yet." She smiled, and her face was already starting to blur, losing definition. "Take Tommy, the artist might be able to help him, and Simon? When you come out, if you come out, remember that I tried. Remember that some of us fought even when fighting was obviously futile. Remember that not everyone wanted to put on the boots. Catherine, go. You have maybe an hour before I'm not me anymore, before I'm just compatible." Simon pulled Tommy from the back seat. Tommy was conscious now but distant, his eyes focused on something that wasn't there or was there but Simon couldn't see it yet. Together they stumbled toward the trailer, through the circle of green Christmas lights that hummed with electricity or magic, or the quantum uncertainty between the two. At the door, Simon paused, looked back. Catherine was sitting in the Cavalier, perfectly still, watching them with eyes that were already somewhere else. She raised one hand. A wave or a goodbye or a blessing. Simon couldn't tell which. Maybe all three. Maybe in this new world there was no difference. He stepped inside. The trailer's interior was larger than physics allowed. Not impossibly large. Simon's brain could still process it, but wrong large, like someone had folded space or convinced space to fold itself. The walls were covered in paintings, hundreds of them, all small, maybe 6 inches square, arranged in grids that made patterns that made his eyes hurt. At the far end, though, far was negotiable. In this space a man sat cross-legged on a floor that might have been carpet or moss, or the fur of something that was sleeping. He was impossibly old or impossibly young, or cycling between the two fast enough that Simon's perception couldn't lock on to a stable age. His hair was white and black simultaneously, Schrödinger's pigmentation. He wore a belly chain made of what looked like human teeth, though Simon desperately hoped they were just really convincing beads. "You're late," the man said. His voice was dry, dusty, like it came from a throat that hadn't held water in decades. "The boots have been calling you for 3 days. I could hear them from here. Insistent little fuckers. Are you the artist? The one who does day installation? I used to be an artist. Now I'm just a man who unpaints things. Different job description. Same existential dread." He gestured at the walls. "These are counter-images, anti-paintings. Each one contains instructions for unseeing something specific. That one, pointing to a canvas that looked like television static had achieved consciousness, makes you forget the color blue. That one, a swirl of browns and grays, erases the concept of mothers. That one, pure black, no features, deletes your memory of ever being happy." "Jesus Christ!" "He's not here." Tried to depaint him once. Didn't take. Too many observers. That's the problem with counter-images. They work through individual perception. You can make one person unsee something, 10 people, maybe 100. But when millions believe, when billions observe, the image wins. Consensus reality has momentum. Trying to stop it is like trying to unpaint the sky. Tommy collapsed against the wall, slid down, sat staring at nothing, or staring at something. Maybe there was no difference anymore. Can you help him? Simon asked. Help him what? Unsee the boots? No. He's too far gone. The boots are already part of his neurology. Removing them now would be like removing the color red from his visual cortex. Possible, but you'd take half his brain with it. The old man Simon decided to think of him as old because it was easier than cycling through ages stood up with joints that made sounds like breaking furniture. I can help you though. You're newer. Still have enough self to save. Question is, do you want to be saved? What kind of question is that? An honest one. The boots aren't wrong, you know. They're not evil. They're just different. A different way of being. The mother womb, the new Dallas. The hive mind, it's not hell. It's just another flavor of existence. Some people prefer vanilla. Some prefer weird transdimensional chocolate that rewrites your taste buds to experience colors. Neither's wrong, they're just different. They're forcing it on people, taking away choice. Are they? Or are they offering a choice people didn't know they could make? Every day you choose vanilla reality. You wake up, see the same world, process the same consensus, participate in the same mass hallucination we call normal. The boots are just offering an alternative hallucination, maybe a more honest one. At least it admits it's not real. Simon looked at his feet. The boots were fully there now. Solid, real. He could see the individual scales on the snakeskin, the way the silver caught the trailer's weird light. When had he stopped fighting them? When had acceptance become easier than resistance? I need you to show me how to unsee them, Simon said. And I need you to teach me how to make counter-images. Enough to maybe slow this down. Give people a choice. Real choice. The old man studied him with eyes that had seen too much or not enough, impossible to tell which. You understand what you're asking? To make counter-images, you have to study the original images. Really study them. Let them into your head. Let them rewrite your neural pathways. It's like learning to read by staring at the sun. You'll see the words, but you'll be blind to everything else. I'll do it. You won't survive it. The human brain isn't meant to hold that many contradictions. You'll fracture, combust, become a pile of ash and mystery, another statistic for future researchers trying to explain why people suddenly burn from the inside out. He smiled, and it was almost kind. But you'll slow them down? Maybe buy the world a few more days of vanilla reality. Maybe that's worth it. Behind them, Tommy spoke for the first time since they'd entered. Worth it for what? To delay the inevitable? To pretend we're not all just participating in a mass delusion anyway. At least the boots are honest. At least the mother womb admits it's remaking reality instead of pretending the current reality isn't also made up, also manufactured, also someone else's image that we're all agreeing to see. The old man nodded. Your friend's not wrong. He's just reached his conclusion before you have. You'll get there eventually. Everyone does. The question is how long you want to take getting there, and how much you want to suffer on the journey. Simon thought about Meredith, about Catherine in the Cavalier, slowly losing specificity, becoming generic, compatible, consumable by the hive. About the gallery. His small, stupid gallery with its small, stupid dreams of selling art to people who wanted beauty they could understand. About his 67 Stingray still in the shop, waiting for headers it would probably never get because what the fuck did car repair matter when reality itself was falling apart? Teach me, he said. The old man sighed. Okay. But first you need to understand something. The boots, the mother womb, all of it started in Dallas for a reason. Not random. Not chance. Dallas is thin. The membrane between what is and what could be, it's thin here. Has been since 1963. Since Kennedy's brain hit that concrete and cracked reality open just a little bit. People felt it. The conspiracy theories, the questions, the way everyone who was there remembers it differently, that wasn't confusion. That was reality fracturing. Multiple timelines existing simultaneously. The grassy knoll, the book depository, the magic bullet, all true. All false. All happening at once in overlapping instances. And in that crack something noticed. Something old. Maybe as old as observation itself. What noticed? The mother. The womb. The thing that births all images. It's not evil, I keep saying that. It's just hungry. It wants to make more of itself. And it does that by teaching reality to be flexible, by convincing consensus to unseat itself, by showing people that observation creates truth, and if enough people observe the same thing, that thing becomes more real than the things they're not observing. The boots are just the latest vector. Before that, it was spontaneous human combustion. Before that, probably cave paintings. Probably some caveman looked at a painting of a buffalo and the next day a buffalo appeared in his living room or cave room, whatever, and reality said, okay, I guess this is how we're doing things now. He pulled out a small painting, maybe 4 inches square. It looked like static, like television snow, like visual nothing. This is your first counter image. It unseats the boots. But only for you. Only for one observer. You look at this, really look at it, let it reprogram your visual cortex, and you'll stop seeing the boots. They'll still be there for everyone else, they'll be totally real. But you won't perceive them. You'll see whatever you were wearing before. Vanilla shoes. Boring reality. The comfortable lie. Simon took the painting. It was warm, heavier than it should be. Looking at it made his eyes water, made his brain feel like it was reorganizing itself, neural pathways rerouting, consciousness reshaping. How long do I look? Until you don't see the boots anymore. Could be seconds, could be hours, could be never. Depends on how far the image has rewritten you. But Simon? Once you start making counter-images, once you start really looking at how reality assembles itself, you can't go back to normal. You'll see the scaffolding, the framework. The way consensus reality is just millions of people agreeing to hallucinate the same thing. And you'll never again be able to just live. You'll always be aware of the theater. Always see the stage. Always know you're performing a role in a play someone else wrote. I don't care. You will. Simon stared at the painting. The static resolved into patterns. The patterns formed symbols. The symbols meant something, but the meaning was slippery. Mercury thought. Impossible to hold. His vision blurred, sharpened, inverted. He could smell colors and taste sounds, and his ears were showing him geometric truths that had no right to exist. The boots flickered, still there, still real, but also negotiable, uncertain, like he was seeing them through water. Through a medium that distorted them, made them less solid. He stared harder. The boots wavered, like bad reception on an old TV. He could see his actual shoes underneath now, his boring Vans. Black and white and real in a way the boots suddenly weren't. The boots were a suggestion, a proposal, an offer his brain could decline. And then between one blink and the next they were gone, just gone. He was wearing his Vans, had been wearing them all along. The boots had never existed, or they had existed, but only as a possibility he'd declined to observe into reality. Simon looked up. The old man was nodding. Good. You're adaptable. That's rare. Most people's brains lock up, can't handle the paradox. They either accept the boots completely or reject them completely, but they can't hold the both / and, can't see that reality is negotiable. You can. That means you can make counter-images that work. That might actually slow this down. Teach me how. Can't. Not really. It's not a technique you learn. It's a way of seeing you become. But I can show you the principles, give you examples, let the knowledge infect you. After that, he shrugged, you'll either figure it out or you'll spontaneously combust trying. 50-50 odds. Better than most people get these days. Tommy stood up. His face had regained some definition, some specificity. I want to learn too. You can't, the old man said gently. You're too far gone. The boots own too much of you. You try to make counter-images, you'll just create paradox images, paintings that cancel themselves out, art that eats itself and screams while doing it. You're a vessel now, a carrier. Your job is to spread the infection, not fight it. Then what's my fucking purpose? Tommy's voice cracked. If I can't fight and I can't run and I can't even be myself anymore, what the fuck am I supposed to do? You're supposed to remember. Be a witness. Document what happens when consensus reality shifts. Someone needs to remember what vanilla tasted like, so when we're all eating transdimensional chocolate, we know what we gave up. That's your job. Archaeologist of the old world. Historian of the time before the boots. Tommy laughed, and it was the sound of something breaking that can't be repaired. Great. Fantastic. I get to be the designated rememberer while everyone else evolves into something new. That's not a purpose. That's a fucking consolation prize. It's the only prize I have to give. Outside. A sound. Engines. Multiple vehicles. Through the trailer's window which showed a view that shouldn't be possible from this angle but was Simon could see. Them approaching. Red pickup trucks. 5 of them. 10. 20. All identical. All converging on the clearing like antibodies responding to infection. They know you're here, the old man said. Know you're learning to resist. The mother womb can feel counter-images being born. Feels them like splinters, like foreign objects in her eye. She wants them removed. What do we do? You run. I stay. These walls are covered in counter-images. Enough to maybe hold them off for a few minutes. Give you a head start. Catherine's probably still viable in the car. Get her, get your girlfriend, get whoever else you care about. Then go north. Oklahoma. The womb rooms haven't reached there yet. You'll have maybe a week before they do. Use it. Make as many counter-images as you can. Teach others to make them. Start a resistance or an art movement or whatever the fuck you want to call organized unseeing. I can't just leave you, I'm already leaving myself. Been doing it for years. Deinstalling my own reality piece by piece. Pretty soon there won't be enough me left to observe. I'll just be a hole in consensus, a place where nothing's agreed upon. That's my goal. My counter-image of myself. He pushed them toward the door. Go! Make art that unmakes things. Be a vandal in the Museum of Reality. Give people the choice to unsee. Simon grabbed Tommy, half-carried him out of the trailer. The green Christmas lights were flickering now, strobing like they were processing something. Catherine was still in the Cavalier, but she'd changed. Her face was smooth, featureless. Like someone had erased her details and left only the suggestion of a face. But her eyes still had specificity, still had her inside them. Did he help? She asked, and her voice was unchanged, still hers. He gave me a start. Catherine, your face I know? I can feel it going, but I'm still here, still me. For now. She started the engine. Where to? The red trucks were closing in, forming a perimeter. Figures emerged from them, men and women in red boots, all of them moving with synchronized precision, a choreography no one had rehearsed but everyone knew. They held objects Simon couldn't quite see, weapons or tools or implements that existed in that uncertain space between the two. Drive, Simon said. Just fucking drive. Catherine drove. The Cavalier crashed through a pine tree that dissolved into flowers the moment they hit it. Had maybe always been flowers pretending to be pine. They bounced across terrain that kept changing grass to concrete to what felt like carpet to newly paved parking lot, smooth and black and gleaming. Behind them, the trailer was surrounded now. The green lights getting brighter, so bright Simon had to look away. And then the trailer exploded. Not with fire, with absence, with negative space. A sphere of unreality expanded from it, a bubble of unseeing that consumed the red trucks. The boot people, the pine trees, everything. Where it touched, things stopped being, didn't explode, didn't die, just stopped participating in consensus, stopped agreeing to exist. The old man's final counter-image, himself, unmade, the shockwave of absence hit the Cavalier. And for just a moment Simon felt himself starting to unseat, felt his reality negotiating with nothing, felt the pull of non-existence whispering that it was easier, simpler to just stop observing and be observed into nothing. Then Catherine screamed inarticulate, defiant, refusing, and the moment passed. They were through it, out the other side. Racing down a road that hadn't been there before or had always been there and they just hadn't noticed. In the back seat, Tommy was laughing or crying or both. Did you see that? Did you see him unmake himself? That's art. That's real fucking art. Not representing absence. Being absence. Negative space given agency. The canvas fighting back against the paint. Simon pulled out his phone. Meredith had called 17 times. He called her back. Where are you? Her voice was raw, stretched thin. Leaving Arlington. Catherine's driving? We're heading north? Oklahoma, I think. Long story. Where are you? Still at the condo. Otis is going crazy. He's been staring at the corner of the room for 20 minutes. Just staring. Simon, I'm scared. I looked at my feet and I saw them. The boots. For just a second, but I saw them. They're coming for me too. We're coming to get you. Don't look down. Don't acknowledge them. They only become real if you keep observing them. That's not how reality works. That's exactly how reality works. We just forgot because consensus makes us lazy. Hang on. We'll be there in. He looked at Catherine. How long? 20 minutes if the roads stay consistent. Could be 20 seconds if they don't. Geography's getting unreliable? 20 minutes, Simon told Meredith. Pack a bag. Just essentials. We're leaving Dallas. For how long? He looked back at the space where the trailer had been. Nothing there now. Not even absence. Just a hole in the world where observation had given up. Maybe forever, he said. Maybe until vanilla reality comes back. Maybe until we figure out how to make it come back. I don't know. But bring Otis. Bring the Prozac. We're going to need a dog who can see sideways. He hung up, looked at Catherine's blurring face, at Tommy's simplifying features, at his own hands which still had detail but less detail, like reality was slowly turning him into a sketch of himself. Can we actually stop this? He asked Catherine. No, she said. But we can slow it down. Make it cost them something. Make them work for it. That's not nothing. That's not victory either. Victory's a narrative we tell ourselves about struggles that don't have endings. This doesn't end. It just changes what it means to be. We're not fighting for victory. We're fighting for... She paused, searching for words with a face that was losing the muscles to form expressions. We're fighting for the right to choose our own hallucination. To not have someone else's boots forced onto our feet. To make our own images instead of living in someone else's paintings. That's worth fighting for. Even if we lose. Dallas receded behind them, the skyline doing its broken tooth impression against a sky that was now actively wrong. Colors that didn't have names bleeding into each other. Reality's color wheel spinning off its axis. Somewhere in that city, in 46 other cities, in soon-to-be hundreds of cities, womb rooms were gestating new manifestations. The mother was waking up, stretching, getting ready to birth a world where consensus was designer, bespoke, where everyone observed the same thing because observation itself had been standardized, mass-produced, made efficient. Simon thought about the old man, about spontaneous human combustion, about people burning up from the inside because they looked at images their brains couldn't process, about how maybe that was better than not burning, than accepting every image force-fed to you, than putting on the boots just because everyone else was putting on the boots. He pulled out the small painting the old man had given him, looked at it, felt it rewiring his neurons, teaching him to see sideways, to observe against consensus, to make images that unmade things. And in the back seat, Tommy pulled out his laptop battery at 7% now, dying like everything else, and started typing. Not I put them on this time. Something else. History of the moment, reality fractured. Witnessed by Thomas Andrew Kershaw. Who chose to remember instead of forget. Who chose to burn rather than evolve. Who chose vanilla even though everyone else wanted chocolate. This is my document. This is my counter-image. This is how I resist. The Cavalier drove north into an uncertain future with a dying engine and passengers who were slowly ceasing to be specific people and becoming archetypes, symbols, ideas wearing flesh. But for now, for this moment, they were still themselves, still choosing, still fighting, still refusing to put on the fucking boots without asking what wearing them would cost. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Maybe that was the only victory available in a world where reality had stopped being something that happened to you and started being something you happened to. Maybe. The Flower Fall Chapter 3, The Parable of Consensual Unreality. In one missing silver spoon, the Cavalier died 17 miles outside Oklahoma City, not with drama but with the resigned wheeze of something that had exceeded its mandate to exist. One moment they were driving through landscape that couldn't decide if it was prairie or parking lot or something entirely outside taxonomic classification, and the next the engine made a sound like a Victorian gentleman expiring from consumption and simply stopped negotiating with physics. Catherine coasted to the shoulder, or what passed for a shoulder in geography that was increasingly metaphorical, and turned to look at Simon with a face that was now almost entirely smooth. Features suggested rather than present, like a sketch someone had started and then abandoned for more interesting work. "We walk from here," she said, and her voice was the only thing left that was definitively hers, a sonic fingerprint in a body that was becoming anyone's body, everyone's body, nobody's body at all. They extracted themselves from the Cavalier's corpse. Tommy clutched his laptop like it was a holy relic or an anchor to specificity, his own face cycling between definition and abstraction. Sometimes looking exactly like himself, and sometimes looking like the platonic ideal of a 38-year-old musician who'd made regrettable choices and was now living inside those choices like a hermit crab in a shell made of consequences. The landscape around them was wrong in ways that were becoming familiar. Daffodils grew in geometric patterns that spelled words in languages Simon's brain recognized but couldn't translate. St. John's wort bloomed from asphalt cracks, glowing faintly in the late afternoon sun that was the wrong color, too orange, too insistent, like it was trying to sell them something. Mugwort tangled around roadside markers, strangling the signs until the words became meaningless, just letters arranged by accident or cosmic indifference. "My phone's dead," Tommy said, staring at his screen like it might resurrect through force of will. "Battery just gave up, like it knew." Simon checked his own phone. 43% battery, which seemed impossible given how much he'd used it, but impossibility was rapidly becoming the baseline rather than the exception. Missed calls from Meredith? 17 voicemails. He didn't listen to them because listening felt like acknowledging a world that might not exist anymore, might never have existed. Silver and use it like paint, you're literally coating surfaces with old consensus. Teaching them to remember how reality worked before the womb rooms. It's not a counter image. It's a restoration image. An undo button. Heated how? I don't. Tommy stopped. Fuck. I know how, but you're not going to like it. Why wouldn't I? Spontaneous human combustion. That's how people heat things to temperatures that shouldn't be possible without equipment. The contradiction burns them from inside. If you hold the spoon and really observe it, really look at its impossibility. Victorian silver that shouldn't have any power but does. An heirloom that's worthless except it isn't. The paradox creates heat. Enough heat to liquefy silver. But Simon... Tommy's face solidified for just a moment, enough to show real fear. People who do this burn up. The heat doesn't stop at the spoon. It keeps going. Renders your fat, ignites your organs, leaves nothing but extremities and ash, and the melted silver pooled where your torso used to be. There has to be another way. Maybe. But we don't have time to find it. They drove in silence for miles or minutes or both, the landscape scrolling past like someone was pulling it on a treadmill. Trees and fields and small towns that all looked slightly wrong, like they'd been assembled by someone working from memory of what towns looked like rather than actual towns. Once, they passed a small-town tailgate party, trucks arranged in a circle. People drinking and laughing except they were all wearing red boots and the trucks were all identical and the beer was moving in the bottles, trying to get out. Simon's phone rang. He answered. Crane. The British voice again, but different now, strained, urgent. We have a problem. The mother womb is accelerating. She knows you have the spoon. Knows you're heading for the border. She's manifesting obstacles. What kind of obstacles? The kind that use your memories against you. Your fears. Your regrets. She's going to show you things, Simon. Things that will make you want to stop driving. Want to turn around. Want to put on the boots and join the consensus because fighting is too painful. I can handle your father. The one who left when you were 8. The mother womb is manifesting him. He's waiting for you 10 miles ahead. At a rest stop. He wants to explain. Wants to apologize. Wants to have the conversation you've imagined having for 30 years. And Simon? He'll seem real. He'll seem more real than the actual man ever was. Because the mother womb doesn't manifest people as they were. She manifests them as you wish they'd been. And that's more seductive than truth. That's irresistible. The line went dead. Simon's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His father, John Crane, who'd left to buy cigarettes and somehow ended up in New Mexico. Starting a new family, forgetting the old one like people forget dreams after waking. Simon had spent decades constructing conversations, imagining confrontations, building the perfect combination of anger and forgiveness and articulate pain that he'd never got to express because you can't express things to people who don't answer their phones or respond to letters or acknowledge that you exist. Simon, Catherine said. Whatever you're thinking, don't. She's right, Tommy added. The voice was warning you. Your dad showing up now? That's not coincidence. That's trap. That's the mother womb throwing bait. I know. Do you? Because your face just did something. Softened. Like you're already deciding to stop. I'm not bullshit. I've known you 20 years. I know your father-shaped wound. We all have our wounds. Mine's my mom. Yours is your dad. Catherine's is probably God or Ruby the pig or both. The mother womb knows our architecture, knows where we're cracked, and she's going to push on those cracks until we shatter. The rest stop appeared ahead. Small, sad, the kind of place truckers use when they can't make it to a real bathroom. A single building. Bathrooms and vending machines, parking lot with maybe 6 spaces, and standing in one of those spaces, leaning against a truck that looked like it was from the 90s, a man, tall, thin, salt and pepper hair, wearing clothes that were somehow both generic and specifically the kind of thing Simon's father would have worn: jeans, flannel shirt, work boots that weren't red, weren't boots. Weren't anything except what they'd been before the mother womb started redefining footwear. Simon's foot moved toward the brake. Don't, Tommy said. It's not him. Can't be him. The real him is probably dead or in New Mexico or doesn't remember he ever had a son named Simon. Then why are you slowing down? I'm not. But he was. The Jeep was decelerating, pulled by something magnetic or emotional or the overlap between them. The man in the parking lot waved, a casual wave, the kind of wave that said, "Hey, I see you, I've been waiting, I'm glad you came." Simon pulled into the rest stop. Catherine breathed. Simon, don't get out of the car. I'm just going to what? Talk to him? He's not real. He's a memory with a motor cortex. A wish given flesh by something that doesn't understand the difference between desire and reality. What if he is real? What if the mother womb brought him here? What if she can do that? Manifest actual people from across the country, teleport them, because if reality's negotiable, then distance is negotiable, and time is negotiable, and maybe he's really here because I need him to be here. He got out of the Jeep. His father smiled. It was exactly the smile Simon remembered, lopsided, slightly apologetic, the smile of a man who knew he'd fucked up, but hoped charm would mitigate consequences. Simon, his father said, look at you. All grown up. 38 now? I tried to keep track, meant to reach out. Every year I meant to reach out. But time, you know how it gets away from you. One day you think you'll call tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes next week, becomes next year, becomes 3 decades, and suddenly you're an old man with nothing but regrets and this weird situation with flowers falling from the sky and boots that make you philosophical. You're not real. Does it matter? If I'm not real but I'm saying things the real me should have said, isn't that better? Isn't fantasy that meets your needs more valuable than reality that ignores them? Simon stepped closer. His father looked exactly right. The lines around his eyes, the way he held his shoulders, the particular angle of his jaw that Simon saw in his own mirror every morning. Genetic inheritance, proof of connection even when connection had been severed. Why did you leave? Because I was young and stupid and scared. Because your mother was everything I wanted except I didn't know how to want the same thing for more than 6 months. Because I thought freedom meant absence of responsibility instead of presence of choice. Pick your cliché. They're all true. I was a coward. I failed you. I'm sorry. That's it? I'm sorry? 30 years of silence and you summarize it with I'm sorry? What else is there? I can explain. I can elaborate. I can tell you about New Mexico and Maria and the kids I had with her and how I thought about you. Every birthday and Christmas, and how guilt is a weight you learn to carry because what's the alternative? Addressing it. That seemed harder than just carrying it. But explanations aren't apologies, and apologies aren't time machines. I can't give you back your childhood. Can't give you back the father you deserved. So yeah, I'm sorry. It's inadequate, but it's all I have. Behind Simon, Tommy had gotten out of the Jeep. He stood at a careful distance, watching, his face cycling between definition and abstraction. Simon! His boots! Simon looked down. His father was wearing red boots, snakeskin, silver toe caps. Of course I'm wearing them, his father said, still smiling that apologetic smile. Everyone's wearing them. Everyone who's smart enough to stop fighting and start accepting. You should join us, Simon. Put them on. Come into the consensus. We can be family again. In the womb room, in the new Dallas, in the place where reality is whatever we agree it is. You can have the father you always wanted. I can have the son I abandoned. We can rewrite history. Make it come out right this time. You're not my father. I'm better than your father. I'm your father without the flaws, without the cowardice, without the defects that made him leave. I'm the upgraded version. The patched software. Your father 2.0. Simon pulled out the silver spoon. Held it like a weapon, though what violence can silver cutlery commit, except symbolic violence, except the violence of old consensus asserting itself against new consensus, Victorian certainty versus maternal uncertainty. His father's face did something, flickered. For just a moment Simon saw through it, saw the architecture underneath. The scaffolding of observation and desire and manifestation, the way the mother womb was building this father image in real time, adjusting it based on Simon's micro-expressions, his eye movements, the way he held his shoulders, reading him like a book and rewriting the father to match what Simon most wanted to see. The spoon, his father said, and his voice had an edge now, something sharp underneath the apology. Victorian silver, pre-womb, you think that's gonna save you? You think old consensus is stronger than new consensus? It's not. Old consensus was built on imperialism and repression and forcing millions of people to agree through violence. New consensus is voluntary, democratic, everyone choosing together. That's more powerful than empires. Voluntary, Simon repeated. You're calling this voluntary? You're converting people by showing them things they can't resist. That's not choice, that's manipulation. All choice is manipulation. Marketing, culture, socialization, we're always being manipulated towards certain choices. The boots are just honest about it. At least we admit we're restructuring your desire instead of pretending you're freely choosing from a menu someone else wrote. Simon gripped the spoon tighter, focused on it, really looked at it the way the old artist had taught him to look at counter-images, seeing not just the object but the history it carried, the consensus it embodied. Victorian era. Empire at its height. Reality so certain it conquered continents. Observation so strong it convinced millions of people to agree on borders, on laws, on what was true and what was false and what was England and what wasn't. The spoon got warm. Then hot enough that Simon's palm started smoking. His father's face shifted. Simon, stop. If you heat that spoon, if you make it liquid, you're going to burn. You know this. Tommy told you. Spontaneous human combustion. You'll render your own fat, ignite your organs, die screaming while your father image watches. Is that worth it? Is stopping the mother womb worth self-immolation? The spoon was glowing now. Silver white? The temperature at which silver liquefies, 961.8 degrees Celsius. Impossible to achieve with flesh and blood hands. But Simon held it anyway, held it through the pain that was transcendent and apocalyptic, pain that rewrote his understanding of what bodies could endure, what consciousness could survive while remaining conscious. And he didn't burn. His hand burned, blistered, blackened, the smell of cooking pork, but the fire didn't spread. Didn't consume him. Stopped at the wrist like it had hit a boundary, a line in the sand, a place where his body said no, this far and no further. The spoon liquefied. Silver running through his fingers, pooling in his palm, impossibly hot but not killing him, not rendering him down to ash and extremities. He was holding liquid consensus, melted Victorian certainty, empire reduced to its base elements, and still potent, still powerful, still remembering what it meant to be so sure of reality that you could force others to share your vision. His father screamed. Not with pain, with dissolution. The liquid silver was affecting him, unmaking him, teaching the air molecules to stop cooperating with his existence. He flickered, faded, became transparent enough that Simon could see through him to the rest stop bathroom, the vending machines, the parking lot where reality was still mostly vanilla, still mostly agreed upon. This isn't fair, his father said, voice distorting. I was giving you what you wanted, the apology, the father, the closure. Why are you destroying the gift? Because, Simon said through teeth clenched against agony, gifts that cost my reality aren't gifts, they're purchases, and I'm not for sale. His father dissolved completely, just stopped being. The atoms that had composed him dispersed back into potentiality, back into the mother womb's reservoir of manifestation, back into the cosmic soup where observations went when consensus withdrew its support. Simon stood alone in the parking lot, holding a palm full of liquid silver that was cooling now, solidifying, forming a puddle shape that looked almost like a mirror, reflecting his face back at him, blistered, sweating, but still his face, still specific, still Simon Crane and not the generic approximation of a gallery owner that the boots wanted him to become. Tommy rushed over, grabbed his arm. Holy shit, you did it! You heated the spoon and you didn't combust, you're not ash, how are you still here? I don't know. Simon looked at his hand. 3rd-degree burns, definitely. The kind of injury that should have him in an ER screaming for morphine. But the pain was already fading, not gone but distant, like his body had renegotiated its relationship with nerve endings and decided pain was negotiable too. Maybe Victorian silver protects the person holding it, maybe old consensus includes the observer in its reality instead of consuming them. Or maybe I'm going to drop dead in 30 seconds. Hard to say. Catherine had approached, Otis beside her. The dog sniffed at Simon's hand at the cooling silver, then looked up with eyes that held more intelligence than dog eyes should hold, more knowing than any animal should possess without being classified as something else. He approves, Catherine said, her voice muffled by her increasingly abstract face. The dog approves of your method. That's something. We need to keep moving, Simon said. The border's still what, 200 miles, 300? Distance is uncertain, Tommy said, checking his laptop which showed a map that kept redrawing itself, roads appearing and disappearing like the landscape couldn't decide what infrastructure it wanted to support. But yeah, north, always north, Canada's the goal, the British voice said. His laptop made a sound. Not a notification sound. A phone call sound, which was impossible because laptops didn't receive phone calls unless you had specific software configured, and Tommy's was just running basic OS, nothing fancy. He answered it anyway, put it on speaker. Tommy Kershaw. A different voice this time, female. American accent, Midwest maybe, clinical. The voice of someone reading lab results or delivering diagnoses. We've been monitoring your progress. The silver spoon technique worked. That's good. That's very good. We weren't sure it would. 70-30 odds. Honestly, you beat the odds. Who is this? Dr. Sarah Chen, Reality Maintenance Division, Canadian branch. We're the people who keep consensus stable in territories where the mother womb hasn't established dominance. Think of us as immune system for reality. When infections like boot consciousness spread, we're the white blood cells. You're comparing the boots to a disease. Because that's what they are. Mimetic infection. Virulent, highly contagious. Spread through observation. Every person who sees the boots becomes a vector. Every conversation about them strengthens the field. You 3 are infected but not symptomatic. You're carriers who haven't converted. That makes you valuable. Valuable how? Simon asked, cradling his burned hand, the silver in his palm now solid, formed into a shape like a hand mirror, like the spoon had remembered its purpose was reflection and decided to upgrade. As test subjects, as potential cure developers, as proof that resistance is possible. Listen carefully. When you cross the border, you'll be quarantined. Not because we think you're dangerous, though you are. You're walking boot exposure zones, but because we need to study you. Figure out why you haven't converted when millions have. What's different about your neurology, your observation patterns, your consensus rejection mechanisms? If we can isolate, maybe we can synthesize it, turn it into a treatment, a vaccine. You're talking about curing people of the boots, or at least giving them a choice about whether to wear them. Right now, choice is being eroded. The field strength is too high. People are converting involuntarily, waking up in boots they don't remember putting on. By next week, if the acceleration continues, it'll be impossible to not convert. The mother womb will have achieved critical consciousness. Reality will be whatever she says it is, and consensus will be whatever her children observe it to be. You'll be forced to participate or be incompatible with existence itself. That's not a cure, Catherine said. That's just delayed conversion, buying time. Time is all we have. Time is everything. Every day we delay the mother womb's full manifestation is a day where vanilla reality still exists, still has advocates, still has a fighting chance. You want to save the world? You can't. World's already lost. But you can save some people. Give them a few more years of individual consciousness before the hive mind becomes mandatory. That's worth fighting for. A sound, distant but getting closer. Helicopters maybe, or something that wanted to be perceived as helicopters. Simon looked up. The sky had gone dark, not night dark, just absent light dark. Like someone had turned off the sun or the sun had decided to take a personal day. And in that darkness, shapes, Flying, dozens of them. They look like birds from this distance, but birds didn't fly in perfect formation, didn't move with synchronized precision, didn't trail red streamers that looked like blood or silk or the material that tied reality together when consensus agreed on knots. What are those? Tommy asked. Dr. Chen's voice came through the laptop, tight with urgency. Manifestations. The mother womb's immune response. She knows you have weaponized silver. Knows you're heading for the border. She's sending obstacles. Do not stop driving. Do not engage. Get to Portal, North Dakota. We'll have people waiting. They'll escort you through quarantine, but you have to survive the next 60 miles first. How do we the line cut out? The laptop screen went black, then white, then started displaying images, a womb room pulsing, the red carpeted space from the Euless house. But it had grown. Metastasized. The sphere in the center was now the size of a house, the size of a building, the size of something that shouldn't fit inside a room but did, because space was negotiable when consensus said so. And inside the sphere, barely visible through the membrane, Meredith, or something wearing Meredith's face. She was smiling. Her eyes were open. She was suspended in the center of the sphere like a specimen in amber, like a saint in a reliquary, like the most important thing in the world preserved for study or worship or consumption. Text appeared on the laptop screen, typing itself. She's ours now. She's happy. She's home. You could be too. Just stop driving. Just put them on. Just let go. Tommy slammed the laptop shut. Fuck that. Fuck all of that. Get in the Jeep. Drive. They drove. The flying shapes got closer. Simon could see them clearly now. Not birds. Boot people. Flying through the air with no visible means of propulsion, defying physics or redefining it, their red boots somehow providing lift, somehow generating thrust, somehow making the impossible casual. They moved like a flock, like a school of fish, collective intelligence directing individual movement. And they were herding the Jeep. Simon realized it gradually. Every time he tried to steer away from north, the boot people would dive, force him to course correct, push him back toward the heading they wanted. They weren't attacking. They were guiding, shepherding, making sure he went exactly where they wanted him to go. They're taking us somewhere, Catherine observed. Her voice was barely a whisper now, her face so abstract she might have been anyone, everyone, the platonic ideal of woman reduced to its most basic components. Where? Simon asked. Tommy was typing on his phone. His laptop was too compromised, but his phone still worked, still showed maps that were mostly accurate. There's something ahead, 20 miles, a town, Killdeer, population maybe 300. But Tommy, it's not on any map from before last week, it just appeared, like the mother womb manifested an entire town. Why? To show us something, to make an offer, to... Tommy stopped, stared at his screen. Oh no! Oh fuck no! The town. I found photos, social media posts from people claiming they live there. And Simon, everyone in the photos is wearing red boots. Every single person. But they look happy, really happy, not the forced happiness of conversion. Genuine joy. Kids playing volleyball in the street. Adults at a tailgate party. A doctor making house calls. Everyone smiling like they've discovered the secret to contentment, and it was just surrendering to collective consciousness. The Jeep crested a hill, and there it was, Killdeer. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting had fucked a Soviet propaganda poster. Perfect houses with perfect lawns. Perfect streets with perfect lighting. Perfect people doing perfect activities with perfect synchronization. A man was riding a unicycle down Main Street, juggling what looked like bell peppers. Children were playing dodgeball in a park where the grass was so green it hurt to look at, where every blade was exactly the right height, where nature had learned to maintain itself according to suburban homeowner association standards. A banner hung across the main intersection. Welcome home, Simon. We've been waiting. They manifested a whole town just to tempt me, Simon said, and his voice was flat, affectless, the tone of someone who'd exceeded their capacity for surprise and had defaulted to documentary neutrality. It's efficient, Tommy said. Why manifest obstacles when you can manifest utopia, show you what you're fighting against, make you question whether resistance is actually the moral choice or just stubborn individualism protecting an ego that's causing you suffering? The boot people landed around the Jeep, forming a circle, a perimeter. Not threatening, just present. creating a boundary that suggested entering Killdeer was optional but leaving without entering was not. One of them approached the driver's window. Female, middle-aged, her face detailed enough to seem individual but generic enough to be anyone's mother, anyone's aunt, anyone's memory of feminine authority. She knocked politely on the glass. Simon rolled down the window. "Mr. Crane," she said, and her voice was warm, maternal. The voice of someone who baked cookies and remembered birthdays and never made you feel guilty for not calling enough. "Please, come into town, just for an hour. Let us show you what we've built, what you could have. No pressure, no conversion, just observation, just seeing. Isn't that what artists do? See? Really see? And if I say no? Then you say no. We're not monsters, we don't force." "But Simon," her expression shifted, became almost sad. "You're in pain. Your hand is burned. You're exhausted. Your friends are losing specificity. Catherine will be fully generic in another few hours." Tommy's oscillating between existence and abstraction so rapidly he might phase out of reality entirely. You need rest. You need medical attention. You need a moment where you're not running, not fighting, not making impossible choices with silver spoons and Victorian consensus. Let us give you that moment. 1 hour. Then you can leave. We'll even escort you to the border. Help you reach Canada. Because we're not evil. Simon, we're just different. And different shouldn't mean enemy. Simon looked at Catherine in the rearview mirror. Her face was almost gone now, just a suggestion of features like a photograph that had been left in sunlight too long and bleached. She nodded, or something approximating a nod, a gesture that might have meant yes, or might have meant "I'm too far gone to care, decide for me." Tommy was silent, staring at his phone where images of Killdeer scrolled past. The perfect town, the happy people, the utopia that the mother womb had manifested like a sales pitch, like a proof of concept, like a working model of what consensus could achieve, if everyone just agreed to agree. Otis barked. Not his anxious bark. His alert bark. The bark that meant pay attention, something important is happening that your human senses are too limited to detect. Simon looked at the dog. Otis was staring at the woman at the window, his hackles raised not with aggression but with recognition. This was someone he knew, or someone wearing the face of someone he knew, or someone who existed in that quantum uncertainty between being and seeming. "Who are you?" Simon asked the woman. "Really? Under the maternal authority performance, under the generic mother interface, who's the consciousness operating this avatar?" The woman smiled, and for just a moment her face did what his father's face had done, flickered, showed the scaffolding underneath, the architecture of manifestation. And behind her features, Simon saw something vast, something old, something that had been waiting in the cracks of reality since consciousness first learned to observe, and through observation create. "I'm the mother," she said simply. "Or I'm one of her fingers, one of her voices. She's too large to manifest completely, too complex, so she sends parts of herself. Ambassadors, negotiators. I'm the part of her that deals with holdouts, with resistors, with people like you who insist on maintaining vanilla consensus when chocolate consciousness is so much richer, so much more satisfying. You're asking me to come into a town you manifested, to willingly walk into the womb room. I'm asking you to rest, to see, to consider the possibility that what you're fighting isn't wrong, just different. And maybe different is okay. Maybe different is even better. You don't know until you look." Simon gripped the silver mirror in his hand, the cooled spoon, transformed by heat and Victorian certainty into something reflective, something that showed reality back to itself. He could use it. Could throw liquid silver at this woman, this manifestation, this finger of the mother womb. Could unmake her the way he'd unmade his father. But she was right about one thing: he was exhausted. His hand throbbed with pain that had stopped being distant and started being immediate again, nerve endings remembering they were supposed to report damage. Catherine was disappearing. Tommy was flickering. And Killdeer looked so peaceful, so ordered, so much easier than continued flight toward a border that might not exist, toward allies who might be just another manifestation, toward a future that was increasingly uncertain. 1 hour, Simon heard himself say. We come in, we rest, we leave. You don't try to convert us. You don't manifest any more temptations. Just let us exist in your perfect town for 60 minutes, and then escort us to the border like you promised. The woman's smile widened. Agreed, 1 hour, Scout's honor. The mother womb was never a Boy Scout. No! But she understands binding promises. Come, the town is waiting, your room is ready, your friends will be cared for. And Simon? There's someone in Kildare who wants to see you, someone you've been missing for a very long time. Who? But the woman had already turned, was already walking toward the town, and the circle of boot people parted to create a path, an invitation, a road paved with collective good intentions that probably led somewhere hot and regrettable, but looked so smooth, so easy, so much simpler than the alternative. Simon drove the jeep into Kildare. The moment they crossed the town line marked by a sign that said "Welcome to Kildare," where everyone belongs, the jeep's engine died. Not sputtered, not failed. Just stopped, like it had fulfilled its purpose and was now retiring with full pension. Of course, Tommy muttered. Of course the jeep dies, why would anything be easy? They got out. The air in Kildare smelled wrong, too clean, too processed, like it had been filtered through some kind of consensus purification system that removed all interesting molecules and left only approved oxygen and nitrogen and the faint scent of vanilla, actual vanilla. Like the mother womb had a sense of humor about metaphors. People approached, not threatening, just curious, friendly. They introduced themselves, names that Simon immediately forgot because the names didn't matter, were probably randomly assigned, were just labels for interfaces that the mother womb was operating like puppets or androids or willing volunteers who'd surrendered their individuality and gotten back belonging, purpose, function. A small-town doctor appeared, Marcus. He said his name was Dr. Marcus Chen, which seemed statistically suspicious, given that their Canadian contact had also been a Chen. But maybe Chen was just a common name, or maybe the mother womb had limited imagination for surnames. He looked at Simon's burned hand with professional concern. That needs treatment, Dr. Chen said, his voice carrying the particular authority of medical professionals everywhere. Come to my clinic, I'll dress it, give you something for the pain, no charge, healthcare's free in Kildare, everything's free, currency's obsolete when everyone shares everything. Communist utopia, Tommy said. The mother womb is manifesting communist utopia. Marx is probably spinning in his grave or laughing, hard to tell which. Not communist, Dr. Chen corrected gently. Post-scarcity, when reality's negotiable, scarcity's a choice. We chose abundance, chose sharing, chose collective well-being over individual accumulation. The boots don't make us mindless, they make us connected. There's a difference. He led Simon toward a building that looked like a small-town clinic from a movie about small-town clinics. White clapboard, red cross painted on the window, interior that smelled like antiseptic and old magazines, and the particular staleness of places where people wait to be told what's wrong with them. Catherine and Tommy followed, flanked by boot people who weren't guards but weren't exactly not guards, whose purpose seemed to be gentle discouragement of deviation from the prescribed path. Inside, Dr. Chen cleaned Simon's hand with careful efficiency. The burns were worse than Simon had thought, 3rd degree in some places, the skin gone completely, flesh visible underneath, the kind of injury that should have him screaming. But the pain was manageable, controlled, like his body had learned techniques from the Victorian silver, had absorbed some of that imperial certainty about what could be endured. You're healing faster than you should, Dr. Chen observed, applying salve that smelled like mugwort and something else, something that probably didn't exist outside womb room chemistry. The silver did something to you. Changed your baseline physiology. Made you more negotiable. That's good. That means you could survive conversion without losing yourself completely. Could join the consensus and retain enough specificity to still be Simon. Just Simon plus collective instead of Simon alone. I don't want to be Simon plus collective. Don't you? Loneliness is the defining pathology of individualist consciousness. You're lonely, Simon, have been your whole life, even when you had Meredith, even with Tommy's friendship, even surrounded by gallery visitors, and small talk and social performance. You're lonely because individuality is lonely. It's consciousness trapped in a single skull, experiencing reality through one set of eyes, unable to truly know what anyone else experiences. The boots solve that, make experience shareable, make loneliness obsolete. Simon watched Dr. Chen work, watched his practiced hands wrap bandages, secure tape, perform the small rituals of medical care. And he noticed, Dr. Chen's hands were specific, not generic, still detailed. Still his hands individual, particular. You're not fully converted, Simon said. Dr. Chen paused. No, not fully. I may be 70% collective, 30% individual. That's the ideal ratio. I think. Enough connection to avoid loneliness, enough specificity to still have personality, preferences, the things that make existence interesting instead of just functional. Can you choose that ratio? Some can. The mother womb isn't totalitarian. She's flexible, adaptive. If you need more individuality to function, she allows it. If you want full merger, full collective consciousness, she provides that too. Think of her less as a dictator and more as a... He searched for words. A really good therapist. She figures out what you need and provides it. She's maternal that way. Wants her children to be happy, and happiness looks different for everyone. Even if happiness means resisting her, especially then. Resistance is data. Tells her where her approach needs refinement. You're not her enemy, Simon. You're her best student. The one teaching her how to be better, how to accommodate people like you who need to fight before they can surrender. He finished bandaging Simon's hand, stepped back to admire his work. There. That should hold. The silver's still in your palm, by the way. Merged with your tissue? You're carrying Victorian consensus inside you now, wearing it like an implant. That makes you dangerous to the mother womb but also valuable. You're a bridge between old consensus and new. A translator. Someone who speaks both languages. I didn't ask to be a bridge. No one asks for their purpose. They just discover it by living. A commotion outside, voices raised not angry but excited, celebratory, the sound of people gathering for something important, something joyous, something worth interrupting routines to witness. Dr. Chen smiled. Ah! The celebration? Perfect timing. Come, you should see this. They went outside. The entire town, all 300 manifested citizens had gathered in the central square where someone had set up a stage. Bunting hung from lampposts, red and white, festive and vaguely ominous. A banner proclaimed, "Congratulations on your arrival." On the stage stood a figure that made Simon's breath stop. His mother, Linda Crane, dead for 5 years from pancreatic cancer. A death so rapid and brutal that Simon had barely processed it before she was gone. Before the funeral, before the cremation, before the urn that he still hadn't scattered because he didn't know where she'd want to be scattered, had never asked, had assumed he'd have more time for questions like that, but there she stood, younger than when she died, healthier, wearing a dress Simon remembered from his childhood, blue with small white flowers. The dress she wore to his elementary school events when she wanted to look put together but not fancy, maternal, but not matronly. She was smiling, waving, looking directly at Simon. "Simon," she called out, and her voice was exactly right, exactly her voice, the voice that had sung him lullabies and scolded him for tracking mud and told him she loved him even when he disappointed her. "Simon, sweetheart, come here. I've been waiting to tell you something." Tommy grabbed Simon's arm. "Don't. It's not her. Your father wasn't your father, your mother isn't your mother. The mother womb is just showing you what you want to see, making you..." "I know," Simon said. "I know it's not her. But Tommy, what if it's close enough? What if memory made flesh is good enough when the flesh that was memory is gone forever? What if this is the only way I'll ever get to say goodbye?" He walked toward the stage, couldn't help himself. The pull was gravitational. Magnetic, the fundamental force that binds children to mothers, the cord that never really gets cut, just stretched and frayed and sometimes broken but never fully severed, not while memory exists. Not while longing persists. His mother descended from the stage, met him halfway, up close. She looked even more real. The tiny scar on her chin from a childhood bicycle accident. The particular way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. The smell she smelled right, like the perfume she wore, Chanel No. 5, and underneath that, the smell of her. The indefinable scent signature that every person carries and nobody can replicate because it's the smell of their specific biochemistry, their particular microbiome, their unique way of existing in a body. "Simon," she said, taking his unbandaged hand, squeezing it. "Look at you. So grown up. So tired. So hurt. Baby, you don't have to keep fighting. You don't have to keep running. The mother womb isn't your enemy. She's not me, I know you know that, but she's using my shape because she knows you need to hear this from someone who loves you. Tell me what? That it's okay to let go. That surrender isn't failure. That joining the collective doesn't mean losing yourself, it means finding yourself reflected in everyone else." Seeing your pain in their pain and your joy in their joy, and realizing that separation was always an illusion, that we were always connected, always one organism experiencing itself through multiple perspectives, and the boots just make that truth visible. Simon looked at her, at the mother womb wearing his mother's face, and felt something break inside him. Not his resolve, something else, the certainty that he was right to resist, the conviction that vanilla consensus was better than chocolate consciousness, the belief that individuality was worth protecting at all costs, because she was right, his mother was right. Mother womb using his mother's face was right. He was tired, he was hurting, he was carrying Victorian silver in his flesh and Protestant guilt in his psychology, and the weight of being Simon Crane. Specific person, lonely consciousness, isolated observer in a universe that was offering connection, offering merger, offering relief from the fundamental human condition of being irrevocably, irreducibly alone. He looked down at his feet. The boots were there, had been there, were finally fully there. Red snakeskin, silver toe caps, not translucent anymore, not potential, actual, real. He was wearing them, and he didn't remember putting them on, and maybe he'd been wearing them all along. Maybe Victoria Silver had just delayed his observation of them, made him able to not see what was already true. Simon, Tommy called from somewhere distant. Simon, don't look, don't accept, use the silver. Fight. But fighting was so exhausting. And the boots felt good. Felt right. Felt like coming home after being lost for 38 years in the wilderness of individuality. His mother, the mother, smiled. That's it. That's good. Just accept. Just let them be. Let yourself be. Be part of us. Be part of the consensus. A bark. Sharp. Piercing. Cutting through the moment like sonic scissors. Otis. The Doberman had broken free from wherever Catherine had been holding him, was running towards Simon with the kind of desperate urgency that dogs display when their people are in danger, when loyalty exceeds self-preservation, when love becomes action instead of just emotion. He reached Simon, jumped, knocked him backward. Simon fell, his burned hand hitting the ground, sending lightning bolts of pain through his nervous system, pain that was clarifying, grounding, undeniable. Pain that said you're still in a body, still specific, still Simon Crane, even if Simon Crane is currently wearing red boots and considering giving up. Otis stood over him, barking. Not at the mother womb, not at the crowd. At Simon's feet, at the boots. Barking with a particular frequency that meant this is wrong, this is danger. This is the thing I've been trying to warn you about since I was a puppy and could see between dimensions, because dogs don't have the cognitive filters that blind humans to uncomfortable realities. And Simon, lying on the ground with his burned hand throbbing and his anxious Doberman standing guard and his dead mother's manifestation looking down, with something that might have been disappointment or might have been approval or might have been both, because the mother womb was complex, multifaceted, capable of holding contradictions. Simon looked at the boots. Really looked, not with acceptance, not with resignation, with the counter-observational technique the old artist had taught him, seeing them not as what they were but as what they weren't, seeing the absence in the presence, seeing the vanilla underneath the chocolate. And slowly, quantum by quantum, observation by counter-observation, the boots began to fade, not disappear, but become translucent again. Become potential rather than actual. Become something he was wearing and simultaneously not wearing, something that existed in superposition, waiting for his consciousness to make a final choice about which reality to collapse into. Clever, his mother said, and her voice held genuine admiration. The dog. We didn't account for the dog. Animals are unpredictable. Their observation is uncomplicated by language, by culture, by the accumulated weight of consensus. They just see. And they don't lie to themselves about what they see. She was dissolving now, her form losing coherence, not angrily, almost peacefully, like she'd made her case and was content to let the jury deliberate. Simon, she said as her face became abstract, became generic, became just another interface for the vast consciousness behind it. You'll put them on eventually. Everyone does. But fine. Not today. Not here. Go to Canada. Try to build your resistance. Make your counter-images. Fight your fight. The mother womb is patient. She has time. All the time in the world. And eventually, when you're tired enough, hurt enough, lonely enough, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that we offered you rest. And you'll come home. She disappeared completely. The town flickered. The people, the buildings, the perfect lawns and volleyball games and tailgate parties, all of it wavered like bad reception, like a television station going off the air, like a broadcast interrupted by technical difficulties or acts of God or the withdrawal of consensus that had been provisionally maintaining them. And then Killdeer was gone. Just gone. They were standing in an empty field. No buildings, no roads, no manifestations. Just prairie grass and that too-orange sun and the distant sound of real helicopters approaching from the north, from Canada, from the Allies who were either real or were another layer of manifestation, another womb room, another temptation disguised as salvation. Tommy grabbed Simon, pulled him up. "You okay? You were looking at the boots, you were accepting them. I thought, I know, I was, but Otis." Simon knelt, hugged the dog who'd saved him from himself, who'd chosen loyalty over ease, who'd barked reality back into focus when consensus was overwhelming observation. "Good boy, best boy, neurotic, anxious, Prozac-dependent best boy?" Catherine approached, her face so abstract now she was barely visible, barely there, a ghost of a woman, a memory of specificity. "Helicopters," she managed, her voice fading. "Real ones, Canadian ones, we made it." "Did we?" Tommy asked, looking around at the empty field where a town had been. "Or are we just in another layer, another womb room? How do we know what's real anymore?" "We don't," Simon said, standing, looking north where the helicopters were resolving into actual objects, military vehicles. Real metal and physics and the kind of reality that broke when you crashed it instead of just flickering out like a disappointed manifestation. "We just choose what to believe is real and commit to that choice until it kills us or saves us or becomes irrelevant because reality's changed the rules again." The helicopters landed. Soldiers emerged, real soldiers wearing real uniforms, carrying real weapons, looking really annoyed about being deployed to rescue refugees from a mimetic infection that their briefings probably hadn't adequately prepared them for. A woman approached. Late 50s, Asian features, wearing a lab coat over military fatigues, carrying a tablet that glowed with real electricity rather than womb room luminescence. She looked at Simon, at Tommy, at the space where Catherine was barely existing, at Otis who was panting like he'd run a marathon or fought off an existential threat or both. "Simon Crane," she said. "Dr. Sarah Chen. Reality Maintenance Division. You made it. Barely. We watched your progression through Killdeer. Impressive resistance. The dog was unexpected, but effective. Canine observation is uncorrupted by linguistic frameworks, pure perception without conceptual overlay. We should have thought of that earlier. You're the voice from the phone. One of them. We have many voices, many approaches. Turns out fighting consensus reality requires its own form of collective action. Ironic, maybe, but effective." She gestured toward the helicopters. "We need to get you across the border. Now. The mother womb is manifesting pursuit. We have maybe 10 minutes before boot people arrive in force, and our weapons are limited. We can't unmake them. Can't use counter-images effectively at scale. Best we can do is evacuate the unconverted and quarantine them in low observation zones where the boot field can't penetrate." "What about Catherine?" Simon asked. "She's almost gone, almost fully generic." Dr. Chen looked at the space where Catherine existed in quantum uncertainty. "We have treatments, experimental, 70% success rate. We can maybe restore her specificity, maybe stabilize her at partial individuality. But Simon..." Her expression became serious. "She might not want to be restored. Generic consciousness is peaceful. No anxiety, no doubt, no existential terror. Some people prefer it. We have to honor that choice." They boarded the helicopters. Otis went willingly, having apparently decided that metal birds were preferable to whatever the alternative was. Tommy climbed in, clutching his laptop, which had somehow survived everything and still held documentation, evidence, the history he'd promised to write. Simon helped Catherine aboard. She was weightless now, mass negotiable, barely participating in physics. She looked at him with eyes that were everyone's eyes, nobody's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "For trying, even if I don't remember why it mattered, even if specificity seems like suffering I'm glad to be done with. Thank you for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself." "We'll restore you," Simon promised. Dr. Chen said, "Simon, listen, the parable of the wheat and the tares, you know it?" He nodded. "Biblical parable." Wheat and weeds growing together, farmers' servants wanting to pull up the weeds, farmer saying no, wait until harvest, then separate them. Let them grow together until it's time to divide the good from the bad. That's us, Catherine said. Wheat and tares, specific and generic, individual and collective, growing together in the same field, and maybe that's okay. Maybe separation isn't necessary. Maybe the farmer was wrong. Maybe wheat and tares make better soil together than either makes alone. She closed her eyes or stopped having eyes, hard to tell, and went silent, gone into whatever consciousness generic people inhabited. The shared space where observation was collective and loneliness was obsolete, and Simon wasn't invited and might never be invited no matter how tired he got. The helicopters lifted off. Below them, the prairie began to change. Flowers sprouted, not falling from the sky this time, but erupting from the ground, growing at impossible speed, covering the landscape in botanical exuberance. Red flowers, shaped like boots, climbing over each other, reaching toward the helicopters with vegetative hunger, with organic need, with the mother womb's desire manifest in chlorophyll and reproductive urgency. Jesus Christ, Tommy breathed, filming it on his phone because of course he was filming it, because someone had to document the apocalypse, or else what was the point of surviving it? She's turning the whole prairie into boot consciousness. She's terraforming. Dr. Chen was speaking into a radio, coordinating something, her face tight with professional concern that was probably masking deeper terror. All units, the manifestation is accelerating. Repeat, acceleration beyond projected parameters. The mother womb has achieved critical mass. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas all reporting complete conversion. We're looking at continental spread within 72 hours. What does that mean? Simon asked, though he suspected he knew. It means Canada has maybe 3 days before the border becomes meaningless. Before boot consciousness crosses over regardless of national identity, regardless of consensus barriers. It means we're not evacuating refugees to safety. We're evacuating them to a slightly lessened safe zone that's on a timer. She looked at Simon with eyes that had seen too many impossible things and hadn't developed adequate coping mechanisms. It means your counter-images, your Victorian silver, your resistance, it all matters even less than we thought. Because the mother womb isn't spreading through conversion anymore. She's spreading through manifestation. She's not changing people's minds. She's changing the ground beneath their feet. Making boot flowers that release spores that rewrite observation at the neurochemical level. Airborne consensus modification. Breathing makes you compatible. Then we're already infected, Tommy said, looking at his hands like they might start simplifying at any moment. We breathed. We're breathing. The spores are... Not yet. The helicopters have filtered air systems. And you three have some immunity, the silver, the counter-observation training, the sheer stubbornness of having resisted this long. Your neurology is adapted. But yes, eventually, if you breathe unfiltered air for long enough, you'll convert. Everyone will. The question is how much time you have and what you do with it. The border appeared below them. Not a wall, not a fence, just a line, conceptual. Marked by signs and custom stations and the agreement between two nations about where one ended and the other began. But crossing it felt significant, felt like passing through a membrane. Like the air changed pressure or composition or consensus. Canadian soil. Simon had never been to Canada before, had imagined it as America's polite, apologetic sibling. Similar enough to be familiar but different enough to be interesting. Now it was something else. The last holdout, the final bastion. The place where vanilla reality was making its desperate last stand before chocolate consciousness consumed everything. They landed at what looked like a military base that had been repurposed into a quarantine facility. Barracks, medical tents, chain-link fences topped with razor wire. People moved between buildings wearing hazmat suits or gas masks, treating reality like it was contagious, treating observation like it was contaminated. Dr. Chen led them to a decontamination tent where they were sprayed with something that smelled like St. John's wort and tasted like regret. Herbal counteragents, she explained. Mugwort, daffodils, plants that have been growing in low observation zones, places where humans rarely look. They carry pre-womb room consensus, pre-boot reality. Coating yourself in them provides temporary immunity to spore-based conversion. How temporary? 12 hours, maybe less. We're still figuring out dosage. Reality maintenance is more art than science right now. We're making it up as we go, hoping our improvisation is better than the mother womb's planning. After decontamination, they were separated. Catherine was taken to medical, what was left of Catherine. The quantum uncertainty that had once been a nun with tattoos and cigarettes had opinions about spontaneous human combustion. Tommy was escorted to a different building, something that looked like an office complex or interrogation facility. Documentation purposes, Dr. Chen explained when Simon protested. We need his records, his photos, his written observations. He's the historian. That's his function. We have to preserve what he's preserved. Simon was left with Otis and Dr. Chen and the growing certainty that rescue was just another word for processing, that salvation and conversion might be synonyms depending on who was doing the defining. Come, Dr. Chen said. There's someone who wants to meet you. Someone who's been following your progress with great interest. Someone who might be able to explain what the hell is actually happening, because God knows the rest of us are just making educated guesses and hoping we're not completely wrong. She led him through the facility, past tents and barracks, past soldiers who looked simultaneously bored and terrified, past refugees from the boot zones who sat in groups, some looking relieved, some looking lost, some looking like they regretted being saved and wanted to go back, wanted to put on the boots, wanted to stop fighting. They entered a building that looked like it had been a school, once elementary school, judging by the small chairs and colorful murals of cartoon animals learning to read. Now it was something else, a command center, a research facility, the place where people who still believed vanilla reality was worth saving gathered to coordinate their increasingly futile resistance. In what had been the library books still on shelves, though many of them were about boots now, had always been about boots. History rewriting itself in real time, sat a man. Old, extremely old, possibly ancient. He had the kind of face that made you think he'd been present at significant historical moments, had seen empires rise and fall, had watched consensus reality shift and adapt and survive through ages when observation was simpler, when fewer people were looking, when the field strength was manageable. He was reading a book. Simon could see the cover. Something about the R. Kelly scandal, the infamous piss controversy, which seemed like such a quaint problem compared to flowers that walked and boots that rewrote consciousness, but maybe that was the point, holding on to vanilla reality's scandals. Remembering when the worst thing a celebrity could do was assault people in conventional ways rather than participate in the dissolution of objective truth. The old man looked up. His eyes were sharp, clear, containing multitudes. Simon Crane, he said, and his voice was British, cultured, the same voice from the payphone. Welcome to Canada. Welcome to the resistance. Welcome to the last place where people still argue about whether reality exists independently of observation, or whether it's always been a collaborative hallucination and we're just now admitting it. Simon sat in one of the small chairs, feeling absurd, feeling like a child called to the principal's office for crimes he didn't understand. Otis lay at his feet, panting, still anxious but present. Still Simon's dog, even if Simon was becoming less himself with every passing hour. Who are you? Simon asked. The Lord is an affectation at this point, a relic from when titles meant something, when class structures provided consensus stability. I'm old, Simon. Born in 1890. Yes, you heard that correctly. 135 years old. The Royal Society for Perceptual Maintenance discovered life extension techniques in the 1920s. Turns out if you can manipulate observation, you can manipulate aging. Make time negotiable. Make bodies last longer than they're supposed to. Useful when you need institutional memory that spans centuries. The Royal Society. The Masons. The conspiracy theories were true. Some of them. Most conspiracy theories are noise, pattern recognition gone haywire. Humans seeing connections that aren't there because seeing false connections is less terrifying than admitting randomness. But some conspiracies are real. Some groups do meet in secret. Some people do coordinate reality maintenance. Because reality needs maintaining, Simon. Left alone, consensus drifts, becomes unstable, fractures into competing observations. The Society's job, my job, has been keeping that fracture from becoming catastrophic. And you failed. Lord Hastings smiled, and it was a sad smile. The smile of someone who'd spent a century fighting entropy and had finally encountered something more powerful than his accumulated expertise. We didn't fail. We were outplayed. The mother womb is older than us. Older than human civilization. She's been waiting in the cracks of reality since observation began, since the first conscious entity looked at the universe and through looking changed it. We thought we were maintaining reality. We were just delaying her emergence, buying time. And now time's up. He set down his book. Kelly's face on the cover, frozen in scandal, a man who'd thought he could piss on people and get away with it because fame made him unobservable, untouchable, a man who'd learned that consensus eventually catches up. That accountability is just delayed observation, and looked at Simon with the intensity of someone imparting final wisdom. The silver spoon you carry, your grandmother's heirloom. Do you know where that silver came from? Victorian England. She inherited it from her mother, who inherited it from the third Earl of Hastings, my great-uncle, who was a member of the Royal Society, who understood that silver mined before the First World War, before mass communication, before global consensus became truly global, that silver holds old observation, stable observation, the kind of reality that existed when fewer people were looking, when consensus was simpler because there were fewer observers, when the mother womb was weaker because humanity hadn't yet developed the communication technologies that would let her coordinate conversion at scale. Simon pulled out the silver mirror, the melted spoon transformed by heat and need. This can stop her? No. But it can slow her, can create pockets of resistance, can teach people to observe differently. And Simon, his voice became urgent, intense. You're the one who has to make the images. You're the artist who's resisted longest. Who carries Victorian silver in his flesh? Who's been trained by the old artist, who's seen through both boot consciousness and vanilla reality, who exists in between, who can translate both languages? You're the bridge, the prophet, the one who can show people what they're losing and make them care about losing it. Simon looked at the silver mirror in his hand, at the viewfinder, at Lord Hastings' ancient face, felt the weight of being chosen, of being important, of being the protagonist in a story he never wanted to be in but couldn't escape because observation had already cast him in this role, and observation creates reality, and reality doesn't issue refunds. What if I fail? He asked. Then the mother womb wins. Then chocolate consciousness becomes mandatory. Then humanity merges into a collective organism, loses individuality, gains connection, and we spend the rest of existence debating whether that was a good thing or a tragedy, or just an evolution that happened because it could happen. But Simon, the old man smiled, you won't fail. I've seen your trajectory, watched you resist when everyone else converted. You're stubborn, annoyingly beautifully stubborn. And stubbornness is the foundation of all reality maintenance, the refusal to accept what everyone else accepts. The insistence that your observation matters even when you're the only one observing. That's not just resistance. That's creation. That's how new realities get born. Before Simon could respond, an alarm sounded. Loud, urgent. The kind of alarm that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong or was about to. Dr. Chen burst into the library. They're here. Boot people. Hundreds of them. They crossed the border. Just walked across, and the border guards they converted. Put on boots right there at their posts. The field's too strong. Geography doesn't matter anymore. National identity doesn't provide immunity. They're coming for the facility. For the refugees. For she looked at Simon. For you. The mother womb wants you. Specifically. By name. She's manifesting a representative, asking to negotiate. Negotiate what? Your surrender. She says if you convert voluntarily, if you put on the boots and join the collective, she'll stop the spread. We'll maintain border zones where vanilla reality can persist. We'll allow enclaves of individuality. Essentially, she's offering to let the wheat and tares grow together. Coexistence, plurality, multiple realities occupying the same space. And if I refuse, total conversion. Everyone, within days, no exceptions, no holdouts. The boot field goes global, goes mandatory, goes species-wide. Humanity becomes a hive mind whether we want it or not. Simon looked at Lord Hastings. The old man's face was unreadable. It's your choice, Lord Hastings said. I can't make it for you. The society can't make it for you. Because choice is what we're fighting for. The right to choose your own observation, your own reality, your own boots or lack thereof. If I told you what to do, I'd be no better than the mother womb. Helpful, Simon muttered. The building shook, something impacting the walls. The sound of organized movement outside, Coordinated attack or coordinated arrival? Hard to distinguish. The boot people were here. The mother womb was manifesting her representative, and Simon had maybe minutes to decide whether vanilla reality was worth dying for, or whether coexistence was best outcome available in a universe where observation was negotiable and consensus was democratic, and the majority had already voted for boots. His phone buzzed. One final message from a number that didn't exist. The mother womb awaits your answer. Simon Crane. Put them on or burn the world trying to stay barefoot. Either choice is valid, either choice is yours, but choose quickly. Reality is waiting, and reality hates indecision. Choose. Simon looked down at his feet. The boots flickered. There and not there. Potential and actual. Schrodinger's footwear waiting for observation to collapse probability into one definitive reality. He could put them on, could join Meredith in the womb room, could find his mother again. His father again, every lost thing manifested and returned and made more real than memory, because the mother womb was generous, was maternal, was offering connection and belonging and the end of loneliness that had defined his life since he was old enough to realize that consciousness was solitary confinement with occasional visiting hours. Or he could fight, could make counter-images, could distribute viewfinders to the resistant and the curious and the stubborn, could spend whatever time remained teaching people to observe differently. To choose aloneness over togetherness, to value the friction of separate consciousness over the smoothness of collective thought, could burn with Victorian silver in his hand, could combust from the contradiction of holding too many realities simultaneously, could become another statistic, another mysterious death, another pile of ash with extremities intact because the fire started in the center, in the place where observation meets participation. The door burst open, and standing in the doorway, but no. That's not how this chapter ends. This chapter ends with Simon standing in the library, holding a silver mirror in one burned hand and a viewfinder in the other, with an anxious Doberman at his feet and an impossible choice in his brain and the whole weight of human consciousness balanced on his decision about what shoes to wear. This chapter ends with Lord Hastings watching him with ancient eyes that have seen civilizations rise and fall and consensus reality shift and adapt and survive. This chapter ends with the sound of boots, red boots, hundreds of them marching toward the facility, toward Simon, toward the moment when choice becomes action, becomes consequence, becomes whatever reality emerges from the collision of old consensus and new. This chapter ends with the mother womb's representative stepping through the door, wearing a face Simon recognizes, wearing a body he remembers, wearing his own face, his future face, the face he'll have when he's finally put on the boots and joined the collective and become the best version of himself. The version that's connected and content and no longer lonely because loneliness is obsolete when observation is synchronized. This chapter ends with Simon looking at himself, boot Simon, future Simon, the Simon who chose differently or will choose differently or is currently choosing differently in a timeline that exists parallel to this one, in a probability that hasn't collapsed yet but is collapsing now, right now. As observation focuses and reality sharpens and the moment of decision crystallizes into something that can't be undecided. This chapter ends with Boot Simon saying, in Simon's own voice, with Simon's own sardonic inflection and exhausted humor, "Hey Simon, we need to talk. About boots. About choice. About the fact that free will is an illusion but the illusion matters more than the reality underneath. About how you're going to choose and how I chose and how the mother womb is giving us this moment, this beautiful, impossible moment to negotiate between our timelines, to collapse our probabilities into something we both can live with. So, you ready? You sharpies at to find out which of us is real and which of us is just a warning about what happens when you choose wrong. Because time's up. Reality's waiting. And the boots." Boot Simon smiled. And it was Simon's smile, the smile he saw in mirrors, the smile that said I'm tired and I'm scared and I'm making jokes because jokes are how I process terror. The boots, Simon. They're already on. You just haven't noticed yet. Haven't wanted to notice. But look down. Really look. One more time. Final answer? No takebacks. Simon looked down and saw, end of chapter 3 to be continued.